want to welcome everybody here, and I want to ask you to all please rise for the invocation. Tonight's invocation will be given by Pastor Tim Clark. He's the worship pastor at Celebration Church, and I'm going to ask you to remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for the grace and the mercy that you've shown our nation and our city. And Lord, I thank you for our mayor and these city council members who are here and volunteering and giving of their time and their time away from their families tonight. And Lord, I just pray most importantly, God, give them wisdom tonight as they make decisions that affect the city, that affect the citizens. And Lord, I just pray, God, for your divine wisdom, for your guidance tonight. Lord, let them do all of the things that would honor you and that would affect your will here in this great city. And Lord, we love you and we thank you for that. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Clark. Council, Mr. Richard Peterson, Director of Operations, came to us in the work session and stated that there was a resolution that had been omitted from the agenda. These are for sewer main point repairs and bypass connections. It has been properly bid and awarded, or graded, and needs to be awarded by May the 31st, which would be 30 days following the bid opening, and has asked us to award the first year of the contract, which is $250,000, with the remaining balance budgeted over the next 2 years. So this is a budgeted item. It was, like I said, somehow didn't make it to the last council meeting nor this meeting. And I don't know if somebody would like to make a motion to amend tonight's agenda to add this resolution to tonight's agenda. So this would be for the awarding of the sewer main point repair and bypass connections, bid number 009-19. Can I entertain a motion to amend the agenda to add this?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of amending the agenda as stated, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, this will be item number 31. Okay, Council. All right, first item on tonight's agenda will be to approve the minutes of the May 10th special call City Council meeting, the regular City Council meeting, the work session, and the agenda meetings which were held on the 13th of May. Do you have any additions or deletions or changes to those minutes you'd like to make? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve those as submitted.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, minutes are approved. Mayor Wilson, your report, please.
Thank you, Council President. Is this on? Let me bring up my... Do you have my presentation ready? Joe? Okay. Last week I had the privilege to attend a conference produced and sponsored by Kaufman Foundation, which was established in the mid-'60s by the late entrepreneur Ewing Marion Kaufman. And he gave me a little thing, so hold on. Based in Kansas City, Missouri, it is among the largest foundations in the United States with an asset base of approximately $2 billion. The foundation's vision is to foster a society of economically independent individuals who are engaged citizens contributing to the involvement of their communities. I had the honor of being part of a collaborative, inspiring discussions with mayors and community builders across the U.S. about how we can improve our communities and proactively engage our citizens. Our forefathers' mission was to establish a model community free from private monopoly and to secure its members therein equality of opportunity. The full reward of individual efforts and the benefits of cooperation in matters of general concern. They kind of sound the same, don't they? Today, our city is full of entrepreneurs, driven by individualized thinkers who drive our economy, build our community, create our leaders, and inspire our young kids. With over 44% growth in population from 2010 to 2018, our city must keep this important ecosystem in place that keeps our community unique. One of Kaufman's initiatives is 1 Million Cups, a free program designed to educate, engage, and inspire entrepreneurs around the country based on the notion that entrepreneurs discover solutions and engage with their communities over 1 million cups of coffee. Mr. Kaufman believed it was a fundamental right for anyone who had a big idea to be able to bring it to life, and 1 Million Cups helps foster that spirit. Its initiative is to connect, educate, engage, and inspire entrepreneurs so they can grow even stronger. Through a network of volunteers, the program is offered in more than 180 communities in the U.S. Hopefully, that number will include Fairhope soon, and this would make us the first city in the state to do so. I came from this incredible collaborative conference back home, and I'm trying to be nice, but to an agenda that is the opposite of this. One of them is agenda item 26. And just to give you a little bit of background, I remember before I took office how often I felt like I had to rally the troops to come to meetings like this, to make our voices heard, to hopefully be considered, when these decisions were made. And oftentimes you left knowing that it didn't matter, the decision was already made. I hope we don't have the same tonight. 2 critical agenda items I requested multiple times to be added to either the work session or council agenda since April 24th were once again left off. These are time-sensitive issues. My hope is that council will discuss the personnel matter that I've requested in a special session after the personnel board meeting, and there's 2 different issues that we need to resolve very, very quickly. I wanted to add this only because I want things to change for the future. I want us to do better. And we do have to place accountability on the people that are making it hard for us to move forward. I tried to add this personnel issue on May 9th because we have our Community and Economic Development Director leaving, gave a 1 month's notice. So I asked for it to be added on a work session on May 9th, and Council President texted me that, too late, missed the deadline. Which, by the way, we had plenty of time to discuss it. I asked it again for this council meeting, and once again it was left off. So I emailed all council, and I think we've hopefully agreed to make this happen next week, at least a meeting. But understand that Sherry Lee's last day is Friday. Now, why are we wasting so much time on critical things that we need for the city? And then you come to these issues that have been added, two items, but what's the rush? Where was the community engaged with this? Item number 26 is to move forward on an appraisal for acquiring a piece of property which is contrary to the recommendations from the National Park Service, internal staff, community engagement, and other stakeholders. When I took office, council was about to approve a master plan for restructuring Valena Park for more ballpark space. I advised Tom Cool, our Parks and Recs director, that we should think about the next 20 years. This is a ballpark we've already outgrown. He discussed it with the rec board, who was also on board, and recommended it to council to approve, searching for property. I will tell you, there are many initiatives I've had to do this way because if it came from me, it wouldn't even be considered. The process of finding the ideal spot took a year. And again, went through all of the things that I told you were lacking in this ballpark property that they're wanting to do the appraisal on tonight. I will say too that with the exception of Councilman Burrell, everyone was excited about the park and what it could do for the community. I negotiated free interest, 3 annual payments, so we could take it and pay for it 100% out of impact fees, which are designated for parks. Wouldn't cost taxpayers anything. And we don't want to borrow more debt and borrow and have more debt because city debt will be paid off the first this week. That's never happened. After the National Park Service did their study, went to every site available, they recommended the property that I budgeted, it was approved on Twin Beach. And understand too that this property is not picked because of a price per acre. This property was picked because it's part of a bigger plan. It's for connectivity, walkability. It's about the quality of life that we enjoy. There's not much inventory this close to town. And we have a lot of opportunity east of 98. And of course that property east of 98 is going to be cheaper. But the economic impact that this park would have located on Twin Beach in an underserved community would be transforming. Elevating this to the level of all of Fairhope, it will pay back tenfold more than the difference between the 2 acreage properties. The one that is on the agenda tonight that has not been citizen engaged, and the one that we spent a year doing the right process. The other item is item number 28. It's for an easement on the property known as the Triangle, which makes up over 100 acres of land. The city owns it because it was forced to purchase it as part of a settlement and a lawsuit. That was when the previous administrators and administration and planning commission approved a lot of things based on who you were instead of the merit of the development. Like most of our very expensive lawsuits in the past, the city had to expend in excess of $13 million to acquire this piece of property. Some of the money came from utility profits, and the rest came from you. Before it settled, the owners were offered multiple contracts from buyers. One was in the amount of $18 million. This was before 2010. Some say, okay, well, the city got a good deal. Preventing private citizens to develop their property within our set regulations is not good business. It's cost us millions of dollars in the past, and we're not going to do it anymore. But we want to look forward. This is a great opportunity. It has value. It is part of a municipal use. It might not happen for 20 years down the road, but it's going to be managed by the city. The city will make the decisions, hopefully with citizen engagement, and hopefully be of more value in the future. Wayne Dias, before he left, presented a conceptual plan for a botanical garden we shared with council and citizens on June 11th of last year with rave reviews. This doesn't mean it's going to happen. This is just one example of things that could be. So why in the world would council want to even consider a conservation easement which would eliminate all future opportunity? It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense to many of the people that are here tonight and the people that have the experience in conservation easements, legal counsel, and, this is hopefully people that will speak up tonight. Conservation easements is a power invested in land trust. They're given to government entities and nonprofits to manage land. We are the government. We're the city of Fairhope. Why would we give that away to a third party? I'm not saying anything negative about the third party, but do we not trust our future? It's crazy. You should be a part of that conversation and decision, because it's not my property. It's certainly not council's property. It's your property. And I respectfully ask that both of those agenda items be removed tonight to have the people have more input. They need it. And speaking of community engagement, I'd like to also add, in front of everybody, because nothing I add seems to ever make it to council agenda and work sessions, that we want to give feedback on the work we did for the K1 community engagement sometime in the near future. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Okay, next item on tonight's agenda is public participation regarding agenda items. This would be items 8 through, now the one added, 31. Items 5, 6, and 7 are public hearings, and you'd be asked to speak to those agenda items during those public hearings. So if you want to speak to items 8 through 31, I'll ask you to come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And just for the sake of time, I want to address a couple of the comments made by the mayor concerning the conservation easement. The city did not pay $13 million for the property. The city paid $8.75 million for the property. It appraised for $12.75 million. We paid $4 million under appraised value. Also, what we're voting on tonight on the conservation easement is to simply enter into a contract for who would manage that conservation easement. We're not voting on any of the components of the conservation easement. For instance, botanical gardens could be included as an allowed use in that conservation easement. So, Mayor, you've misled the entire public, not only with your...
I haven't misled because you didn't include attorney fees.
Misled them with your clause and what's actually going on. Maybe you just don't quite understand.
I understand it completely, but you didn't include attorney fees.
Preserve and protect that land so that it can't be overdeveloped. Let me just give you a few ideas of what the mayor has already proposed for that.
I have not proposed these things. I have spoken with people.
I'm sat in your house when you proposed putting a performing arts center there.
It's not my approval anyway.
You proposed putting a performing arts center there. You proposed swapping the land with Coastal Alabama Community College and moving their campus to that property. What we're trying to do is prevent
I have no approval on this. As mayor, that's what mayors do. They talk. They brainstorm ideas. This is not my decision, though.
We're strictly trying to protect that land for future generations. We envision public use of that land just not over development of that land. What that conservation easement would have in it yet is yet to be decided because
It
we
will be
haven't
negotiated
had.
by you,
Be-
and it's unfortunate that nobody's going to have a say in that. You're
Mayor,
only making it harder for everybody.
You really need to let the man finish before you keep interrupting, if you don't mind. I
This
really
is
appreciate it.
a
Just let the
serious
man-
matter.
Let the man finish.
This is
You
the
had your
only
chance.
citizen engagement we're going to have. I think it's pretty important.
We will have citizen involvement of that. This is just the first step. This is akin to hiring an architect, and then you telling the architect what you want. If you're building a house, you tell the architect, okay, I want a two-story house or a one-story house, and I want a porch, a back porch, a front porch. And so we haven't even gotten to that stage. We're simply selecting the people to help us craft the conservation easement, which would be consist of input from city leaders and from citizens alike. And then they would also make certain that the plan that's enacted is carried out into perpetuity so that people, future politicians cannot take that land and put whatever it is that they want on there, a school or maybe a performing arts center. We're trying
It's
to
already
preserve and
restricted.
protect one of the vitally sensitive areas of town. And I've talked to nobody that's in opposition to that. We've even had a generous gift given to the city to pay for the preparation of this. So I just want to make that comment before we open up public comments about what's really going on with the conservation easement, because there's a lot
not
of
true.
misinformation out there.
Yes,
And then
there
we'll
is.
address agenda item 26. As far as the land goes, the land purchase is being discussed. We did have some actual citizen input. We had the Recreation Board, who's tasked with making recommendations to the City Council that study these ideas and thoughts, come to the City Council. That it was either the last work session or maybe the one before that, and actually made the recommendation to consider the land that is being considered in that. And we are simply having an appraisal done on that land to make certain that if we do move forward with that, that we're getting a value and that we're being good stewards of the people's money. You also stated that everybody was in favor of that prior parcel of land, and you stated that I was the
I
only
didn't
one
say
in
everyone.
opposition.
I listed the people.
I was in total agreement. The whole council was unanimous in trying to purchase that, and we asked you to go out and negotiate that. And your negotiations resulted a cost of 40% above appraised value. The city council is not in favor of spending your hard-earned money, your tax dollars at 40% above appraised
I need to
value.
respond to
But
that.
that little-known fact is left out of the discussion.
Okay, I will respond to that. First of all, the rec board made the recommendation, and the recommendation was based on thinking that Baldwin County Board of Education was going to have a high school out there, which I verified with Baldwin County Education. They're not. The Twin Beach Park is not tied to any other development. It was picked solely on the recommendations because of its use and best use and that location. And as far as expenditure of tax dollars, I negotiated this to be paid over 3 years out of impact fees. Those are not tax dollars. And it would cost us zero because it is through the forecasted impact fees. And we would be expending all of those impact fees in parks for purchasing that.
If they're giving
And
it
as
to us,
far
I'll give
as
them
the
my vote.
appraisal,
I'll take it for
the
free.
appraisal, you don't have a comp for this. We don't have inventory for property west of 98. We are talking about a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get 40 acres of land that is walkable, and as we grow out east, we're going to buy more land. But you have to do things in an order of priority and under a bigger plan, which this was.
I apologize for the interruption. We can start public participation now. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Is it my turn?
It is your turn.
Okay, my name is Mike Dudley. I live at 19309 Scenic Highway 98. I'm here this evening to comment on item number 28. It appears that the City Council, with no reasonable notice to its citizens, will tonight approve a conservation easement in favor of Weeks Bay Foundation that will grant full control of the 108-acre Dias Triangle in perpetuity. This property cost $8 million, as you just heard, plus millions in attorney fees. The final settlement was in 2014. Now, 5 years later, we're paying an organization to take it off our hands. Before you do this, I have some questions that should be considered. How do the citizens of Fairhope benefit from this transaction? Who are the people who do benefit? What does conservation mean? What will the property look like in 5, 10, 50 years? In other words, is there a plan, or what's the vision? Who pays for the conservation? I read through the documents that were in the press packet, and there's nothing in there about anybody paying anything for anything, which leads me to believe that leaves the property in the hands of God and Mother Nature. And if that's what people want, so be it. But will the public be able to use it? Walkways, bicycling, picnicking, whatever comes to mind. What happens if Greeno Road needs widening, or we need a traffic circle at the main 104 and intersection? Do we have enough easements? Will the conservator allow it? Paragraph 4.3 refers to covenants of the seller. Is the city selling the properties? I don't believe that's the intent, but that's what the heading says. Why is the city hunting for park sites and now wants to give one away? Why is there no law that forbids disposal of significant city property without a comprehensive plan presenting to the public for their approval? More to the point, why were the citizens not asked for their opinion before the last hour on this proposal? Contrary to what you may think, I have only admiration for the Weeks Bay organization. I'm not necessarily opposed to a conservation easement. I'm vehemently opposed to backroom government decisions. This is one of the worst I have seen in local government. The citizens can and will do better for themselves if given a chance. Thank you.
Sir, I thought that I had answered a lot of those questions before you gave that speech. And you know, I don't know what the confusion is about how we're not trying to preserve it as more of parklands instead of just the opposite. I thought I made it very clear that we have not formulated the plan yet. We're strictly trying to enter into a contract to help us formulate the plan. We haven't had the input. The plan hasn't been formulated, so it hasn't even been approved.
For him to come up, okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Jim Kellen.
You-
Hey, Mr. Kelly, can I interrupt for just one
No
second?
problem.
Because I want to clarify a couple of things, and I think we have legal counsel here to do the same. But it's been brought to my attention that there is some, at least, question whether or not the council, if it decided it so wanted to do, could even put it in a conservation easement. And so I think a lot of this discussion is premature for several reasons, but primarily because the legality of it is still undetermined at this point. You want to speak to that?
And I invited our, our attorney, who is our planning and land use attorney, who also has not been engaged in this. But there's a lot of unanswered questions. I think that we should allow you to go ahead and speak, and then if you can come up afterwards, you know, I think that's, we don't want to be rude to you.
Go ahead, Jim, while you're
All
there.
right. Jim Kellen, I live at 3 Victorian Drive, which is right across from the Triangle. And I want to, my main thing, I'll tell you my values right up front, everybody. I want the Triangle property dedicated to public use. I don't want to see it commercially developed for so many reasons. It's exceptional as a buffer for watershed issues. It sets a different kind of a tone and statement about our community to do an exceptional job on that property. I want that for sure. And I know, speaking to people that relate to it, you live adjacent to it too.
No, I don't live adjacent to it. I live near it, but not
Yeah,
adjacent
but
to
you know,
it.
we're all right there around that property. So anyway.
There are people that'll seize on that.
I want to make sure I clearly communicate. I want our triangle property dedicated to public use. I do not want to see it commercially developed. So I worry, but I say, so what is our, if any, city binding conditions in relation to our triangle property at this time? Are there any binding conditions? Because in the original purchase, we were looking at conservancy money and some other factors. I don't know if there's any binding conditions attached to our property right now. What is the urgency to isolate 108 acres in the Weeks Bay Conservancy? Again, it's not about the Weeks Bay. I've started and run 2 nonprofits which still exist, and they did a lot of stuff anyway. And how might we, the citizens of Fairhope, be assured that our triangle property is openly being considered for our best long-term future? It's a great asset. I think we need some strong vision that can motivate the development of that area to be of great community value. And I would like ideas such as the botanical park. I like ideas that help make a powerful statement about our community by having an asset that the public can really participate in and enjoy and get a lot of value out of without trying to commercialize it. That's it.
And to that end, you know, most of you are here tonight, I assume, maybe your first council meeting, so you're at a disadvantage. I can't tell you how many times this has been discussed in council meetings, in work sessions, and council members have shared their thoughts about what it would be, and it would be walking paths and bicycle paths and, you know, and maybe portions manicured and botanical gardens, and all of that has been mentioned, and there's nothing going on tonight that would preclude any of that, other than the misconception that we're actually putting it into a conservation easement that's somehow predetermined.
Well, in a previous government officials, and prior to the last election, there was a movement. I was part of that, Hutcherson, Scott, and I were looking at trying to get a process going so we could collaborate and facilitate that. I'm still willing to try to help and be fair and get engagement so that the vision can grow to be something that people become very supportive of, and we get the best results of. That's the main thing. I don't want to isolate the property so that we can't be engaged in making the potential of it as an asset for the community to be really not just good, but outstanding.
Well, the point being, none of this is new. This hasn't been sprung on anybody. I mean, in fact, there are probably council members that said we've been dragging our feet on this. It's been around for months and months and months and been talked about in public meetings. This is not new. It's just new to a lot of you.
Can we just quickly, Ken Watson is our attorney for planning and land use, and I think the biggest thing to say, and I think that he'll ask some questions about this, is we don't have to put it into a conservation. We are the city. Nothing can happen to it without city council approval. So not trusting elected city officials in the future, you're taking that opportunity away from them by putting an easement. Why make it more restrictive?
That is exactly
So
the point.
you don't trust anybody but your own decision.
You don't know what can be done. And if you look back and
Ken, thank you.
And if you look back, if you go 50 years into the future and a future council decides to develop that, you're going to look back and say, we should have saved that property. And we're trying to save it. That's the whole point.
That's all about the citizens.
Ken? Yes, sir.
Council members.
Could you use the microphone, please?
Oh, that one should be on.
Madam Mayor, as the mayor said, I've been working with the Planning Commission for a little over 2 years now. I've had the opportunity to work with y'all in that capacity. This is the first time I've had an opportunity to appear before all of you as a body, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. The mayor contacted my partner, Matt McDonald, late last week and asked for us to look at this transaction from a legal perspective. I'm not here to advocate any result. simply here to, in the limited time I've had available, sometime Friday and yesterday and a little bit today, to identify some legal issues that arise in connection with this contemplated transaction. Really, the concerns center in two areas of the law. Cities are creatures of the state. They derive their powers only through the legislature. So in order to act, there must, for a municipality to act, there must be a statute that specifically authorizes a particular action, or the action must be within the implied powers of the city, which flow from express grants of power. When I tried to look at this transaction from that perspective, I identified one statute that comes into play. It's Section 114720 of the code, which allows the disposal of city-owned property when it's not needed for a public purpose. Now, we've already heard a lot about how much money was spent for this property. I've looked at the deed. I've looked at the development agreement that was made at the same time the deed was made and recorded nearly simultaneously in probate court. To me, it's clear the city paid that money and bought this property, yes, part of the settlement of a lawsuit, but for public purposes. The city bought the property impressed with a public trust. So when you look at it, is this a disposal of property? The law's not clear on that issue. Alabama Supreme Court has said in the same case, disposal means the complete alienation of the property, holding nothing back. But in that very same case, it said, under the particular facts of that case, oh, but a lease would be okay. The city would retain some interest and ultimate control over what happened to the property. A lease for a term would be okay. So that means, at least with respect to the issue of, is this a disposal, there's some uncertainty. Then we go, if we assume that this is a disposal and it qualifies in that regard under the statute, the question becomes, can a determination that the property is not needed by the city, can a valid basis be found for that conclusion? And I submit to you that presents a challenge. If you already own the fee simple title and have ultimate control, there are some restrictions in the deed, but typical public uses like public buildings, public parks, other things are allowed under those limitations. So if you already hold fee simple title for those purposes, how do you find an articulable basis to give those rights to somebody else? And the other broad principle of law here in place, and it's kind of been touched on already, even if there's enabling legislation that authorizes this, even if you could somehow determine it's not needed for a public purpose, the act still must not be inconsistent with another principle of law. And what comes to my mind is it's a well-settled and fundamental principle of law that one legislative body cannot bind forever the discretion to be utilized and employed by future legislative bodies. In other words, a city council or even the Congress can't pass a law on a subject matter the government's still interested in the future until future Congresses. You can never pass a law on that. And I've made no hard and fast conclusions about this transaction. I'm just saying that principle can be implicated. We've talked about what might be needed in the future. It's arguable that if you, well, let me back up just a second. You're right, Council President. We don't have the actual conservation easement deeds. So we don't know what the terms are other than it's forever and it's for conservation. Whether there's some out because, and look, Weeks Bay is a great organization, but whether there's some out for the city because it stops being that, or a higher need arises 100 years from now, that the city council in place then would be bound by an action made 100 years ago to prevent that city council from dealing with that higher need. So there is the potential that the transaction being contemplated would run afoul of that principle.
Thank you.
Yes.
Can I change the subject?
Please.
I really need to go. I've been here since 3:30. I'm here about the hotel, and I don't know how many of you are here because you're concerned about the hotel on the corner downtown. If you want to raise your hand, if you're concerned. Anyway, there's some information out there that's not accurate, so I just wanted to clarify that. About, I don't know, Lisa's going to look it up, but about 12 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that, a real estate agent came to me and said that the north end of that plaza was for sale, and that the owner who owned the indoor historic Gaston Motor Company display area also owned that north end of that plaza. It was subdivided years prior into two pieces. And the person who owned the two-story white part that now Mr. Bowers owns with the south end of the plaza, she still owned the south part. But he owned the north part with that display, indoor display. And that he wanted to sell the north part of that plaza to the city of Fairhope. So we negotiated, and as we negotiated, I called the woman who owned the south part of the plaza. And we talked several times. She was adamantly not going to sell the south part. She had done all the brickwork that's out there. She had created a swell and was going to put in a bubbly little fountain, and had put some all kinds of stuff out there at one point in time. And then she ran afoul with the city somehow, and so she was not happy with the city. So she wasn't going to do anything at the time to do anything with the city. So she was not going to be very helpful. But I called her several times, invited her to lunch, and no. So we bought the north half, so which is what the city of Fairhope owns now. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I have heard several things that we have had opportunities in the past to buy the south part, or we could have bought it then and didn't do it, and had opportunities to put the clock somewhere on the south part and didn't do it, and I've heard all kinds of stuff. So anyway, I wanted to clarify that. But I really want y'all to think down the road, or tonight, of talking to Mr. Bowers about doing a swap, because that is the heartbeat of Fairhope, is that corner. Everything happens there. Mardi Gras parades crisscross there. You know, Christmas happens there. You know, lighting of the trees has been happening there for I don't know how long. You know, so everything happens there. That is it. That's Fairhope. I grew up on that corner. I saw Lurleen Wallace and George Wallace on that corner. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
We can answer that question, too, about the swap, because we did ask that.
Well, I'm just,
You can, but I'm just saying, we can address that when that agenda comes up, because I did ask the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, guys. My name is Corey Martin. I live at 829 Summer Lake Street off of Twin Beach. I'm here to address Agenda 26. And I realize that you guys are still undergoing the processes of trying to determine where we're going with this, but I'm not from Fairhope. I've been a lot of different places. I got to Fairhope about 6 years ago, and I started getting involved in the community. And I must say, as an African-American male, what I saw, I was a little disappointed as far as how the separation and the disconnect between Fairhope and that little square right there where you all have the opportunity now to reconnect Fairhope as a community. So I started doing a little bit of history, and I found out that that little square that we're trying to avoid for whatever purpose, for whatever reason, business or otherwise, was the foundation of this place. Backs, sweat, tears came from that square that a lot of us tend not to talk about. Now, I really don't care for adults. I love you, I don't care for you. But I do care for kids, and I love the kids. And right now, we're a bunch of big adults acting like kids, and we're forgetting about the cycle that was created, be it right or wrong, with slavery. That community comes from a slavery mindset, and it's time for that mindset to be broken. And you guys have the opportunity to do that for these future children. You have the opportunity to make a difference by putting people together again the way it was. And I'm here to speak on that, and I hope and I pray that you guys can get that together and put something, gentrify that area, bring the property value back to where those people used to have, and allow them to be a part of this community. Because they have no voice. I've never been to a place, I've never seen such a thing to where no one has representation, except when it was slavery. Those people are a part of this community. And just because they don't come out and speak on it, it's not about that. Jesus walked this earth, he could hear murmurs. It's called discernment. Because someone doesn't speak does not mean that each and every one of you up there cannot feel in your spirit the right thing to do for that area. It's discernment. They don't have to have a voice because God is telling you all what to do. And I hope and I pray that you listen to that, money or otherwise, and do the right thing. That's all I got.
Thank you.
It's hard to follow Corey. I'm Margaret Davis, and I want to speak to number 28 as well. And I'm not sure where the council is in making a decision here, so I just want to say something early on before you make your decision. But I live, can't hear? Is this working? Is it not turned on?
Can we get IT in here?
This mic.
Can everyone hear me?
You have to speak close to the microphone.
Please speak in quietly.
All right, I'll start over. I don't know where the council is in relation to this issue on number 28, but I want to speak to it now and get a word into it before you go any farther in your deliberations. I live just off Battles Road, and I ride down Twin Beach Road every day, so I know that neighborhood well. When I worked in Mobile, I would try every morning to time my commute so that I would not get behind the school bus, because the school bus stopped every few minutes to pick up kids. Many, many kids who live on that road and on the lanes that come off and on that road. And so the kids in that area need to be considered here. And I'm here to speak for those kids. I understand that the city is considering 2 locations, and I'm sure there's value to both of those for this new baseball complex. But I know that one probably costs more than the other. I want to say that there are things to think about other than money. Now, I really applaud this council for its prudence in the way it spends money, for the fact that you've gotten the city out of debt, that you have wonderful opportunities for so many people. But I believe that there's more to this issue than dollars and cents. I urge that the council consider more than the financial cost of the project and think more about the human cost and the human benefit. Many of you here have kids in the sports program. This city has wonderful sports programs for all of our children. But we know that few African American kids participate in those programs. One reason is for lack of access. We all know that when young people get engaged at sports at an early age, they learn skills, they develop self-confidence, they build relationships. All those things help them mature into more thoughtful and productive adults. They are less likely to get into trouble later as they grow older. In my church recently, we had educators and a peace officer who came to talk to us about city issues, and all of them agreed that high school is too late to wait to develop those programs in young people. So building a baseball complex or something for sports, something in the Twin Beach neighborhood would give those kids access to sports they do not have now, and it would be transformative for that neighborhood. Our city is beautiful. It's wonderful. Too many people want to come here. But it's also very prosperous, and it has money and can do wonderful things. And it offers so many opportunities for growth to those who can afford to take part in them. The possibility of giving heads up to the Twin Beach community is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It will go away if we don't take advantage of it. If we fail to claim this property now, the opportunity will be gone forever. The owner will likely sell it for another housing development. I ask the council to consider this investment in Fairhope's future as an investment in human capital that will benefit us all. We can do good and do well at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Francis Rip with the Rip Report. You know, I listened to 26, and I can tell you what it's all about. It's about politics. That's exactly what it's about. The mayor's staff looked at one side, went through all the reviews, but the council doesn't want it. Same thing you want different with the K1 Center. But let me let everybody know something here. When they built the soccer complex, there were two pieces of property out there. The council elected to buy the cheapest piece of property with a 22% grade. That cost us over $1 million. We wound up with, we don't even know, somewhere $4 or $5 million in the soccer fields over there, and they never desanitized the fields. So you're telling me you're going to make a decision because it's cheaper. Your last decision because it was cheaper didn't work out too well, okay? And you want an appraisal. At the same time you're talking about an appraisal, you're talking about giving away $20 million worth of property. Let's have an appraisal on that. I want everybody in this community to know the value of that triangle property, that 100 acres that they're giving away, that you're going to give away. That's political. 100% political. Does Arthur Cordy across the street have the same thing? The exact same thing? Who wants to answer? Who came up with this idea? Who came up with this conservation easement? Give me a name. Because Mr. Cordy has the same conservation easement over there with Weeks Bay, I believe, on his side of the street. And now, all of a sudden, somebody's come up with this idea for the triangle? Give me a break. And as far as value goes, Mr. Morrell can smirk all he wants to. He never will tell you exactly how much it cost us in attorney fees for that property. It was over $3 million. His comment at the time in the paper was that kind of water under the bridge. I'd like to see an appraisal on that property. And what is the rush? Why are we moving this into like this on a Wednesday night? Final adoption. Everyone tells me, everybody here, oh, well, this is just a review. We're just going to do this. Well, let's see how the last sentence of the resolution reads. The total cost of the conservation easement, due diligence, and closing fees for the property shall be $39,000. Every piece of property I bought, when I paid closing costs, that was it. This doesn't sound like a review to me. What this looks like to me is that you're going to give away an $18 to $20 million piece of property, and you're going to pay $40,000 to do it. This is insanity. This is the dumbest one y'all ever did. As well as Mr. Brown and Mr. Burrell don't need to be voting on this one damn bit. You're right there in that neighborhood. And you are also the one driving force of this. Would you let me know who came up with this idea? Give me a name. Bet you can't.
I couldn't remember, and...
Oh, I can't remember, yeah. I can't remember. Folks, you better be paying attention here. This is the most valuable piece of property in this town. And 20 years from now, you do not know what's going to happen. Mr. Burrell sat here just a minute ago and said he wanted the decision made because he didn't want anyone else to make the decision. He just said that in front of you. If you let this happen, I don't think it will happen. I think legally it'll get stopped. But I sure as hell hope everybody remembers that you tried to do it.
I have no idea. I have no idea who has a conservation easement across the highway. I don't keep up with Mr. Cordy's business. I don't.
Now you do.
Ron Allen, 6612 Willow Bridge Drive. I always like to follow Mr. Rip. I don't know why, because I like to be beaten on, I guess. My question is on 28. Why is there a need for a conservation easement? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to get a study done of the possibilities of that property and what the best uses are? If so, hire somebody. Like we said a couple of months ago, get to South Alabama to do it for you. Auburn University can do it for you. If that's the purpose, I don't see the need for a conservation easement. If there's something I don't see, then consider it, so.
Well, Mr. Allen, just for me personally, the conservation easement is to preserve and protect that land for everyone. We're not giving the land away. We
I know
hold
you're
title
not
to it. I mean,
giving it
that's
away.
just, more of the same.
Let me mention 26 also, just quickly. I don't know which two pieces of property you're thinking of. Apparently there are two.
It's just the north, the triangle itself, and then that north of Veterans Drive.
You're talking about the
I-
ballparks.
No, I'm talking about 26.
Oh, I'm sorry, 26,
Yeah,
not
the
28.
The ballparks.
Yeah.
But if you put it in the black community, I think that'd be a big benefit for everybody.
Diane Thomas, 23389 Main Street in Fairhope. What a night to come before y'all. I'm here for item number 29, the Boutique Hotel, and I have just a few things to say. Debbie Quinn already told you that the city made a lot of effort to buy the south side of that plaza, and they were unsuccessful. One of the things that sets Fairhope apart to me from other communities is the amount of shared public space we have. And if Mr. Bowers builds the hotel as it is presently designed, that public space will pretty much disappear. I watched the minutes of the planning meeting, and I saw Mr. Brown suggest maybe a land swap. And what he said, when you look at the pictures tonight, is the city's part of the plaza will be enclosed on 3 sides by building. And so it will look like an entrance into the hotel. You will not be able to see the intersection of Fairhope Avenue and Section. You won't see the parades, you won't see the Witches Ride, and I don't believe you'll be able to see the clock. I was hoping that Mr. Bowers was going to be here tonight, but I don't know if he is, because I'm not opposed to the hotel. What I'm really asking for is that he consider this swap. And in the planning meeting, when it was suggested, and I went back and listened and wrote down his words, he said, "I'm open, easy, and flexible. And if someone will show me a way to make it work and everybody is happy, I'm good with that." And I want to be fair to him. He also said that he, in considering this, he didn't want to impede himself. And I know that he doesn't want to consider something that he feels like would greatly devalue his property. I'm asking the council tonight to hold their approval of this project and give the parties, the city and Mr. Bowers, time to work out a compromise. Mr. Bowers would be able to build the hotel that he wants, and the citizens would have a true public space in the heart of Fairhope, the most important corner that we've got. Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't have anything really negative to say. And you know, conservation easements are great and wonderful. But in looking forward with utilities in the future, we're stressed right now for water supply, and there may be opportunities for deeper well injection of wastewater effluent. I just want you to be aware of any of those circumstances that may need to be part of the conservation easement if you're going to go that way. And I would suggest that you structure it to where the first 300 to 500 feet off of Fly Creek is more protected than the next 500 feet, and you change the dynamic of what can be there for public good based on the distance it is off the creek. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is anyone else? Nobody wants to talk about vacuum circuit breakers tonight?
Oh, well, yeah, I'll
Maybe
take it
item
up.
17 or something? I don't know.
I'm assuming, since there is a slight lull here, that I beg your indulgence. We've been speaking about the history of Fairhope, and we've been speaking about the future of Fairhope. But we have some people here this evening that, because of the discussions that have been going on, have sort of been left in the background. You'll remember we formed a junior city council, and they have just appointed 4 new members, and they are here this evening. We would like to recognize them as the future of Fairhope. So, Mimi, would you please come up? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mimi Tran. I just recently graduated from Fairhope High School. I'm the president and coordinator of the Fairhope Junior City Council, and just like Ms. Lynn was saying earlier, we are made up of, excuse me, we're made up of 10 ambitious students who are serving as the youth's voice of Fairhope, and it's a way to bring youth into our local politics. We just started last September, and I wanted to share with everyone a few of our accomplishments. In our first year, we accomplished bringing young people to city events such as State of the City, speaking to young Fairhopians at Fairhope Elementary, Intermediate, Middle School, and the middle school about what they wanted to change in Fairhope and discussed how they can be a part of that change. We conducted a survey directed at teens in Fairhope, asking them to voice what they wanted to change in our city, and we received over 100 responses. We organized youth outreach through First Fridays. We made our own social media on Instagram, Snapchat, and Facebook. We created our own website and are developing a monthly newsletter and a student spotlight. We've collaborated with local leaders like Ms. Christina Helmich from the Eastern Shore Chamber of Commerce. We hosted Painting in the Park during Arts and Crafts and designed and painted the Fairhope mural in the Fairhopers Community Park. In the near future, we'll be hosting another youth event called Kickoff to Summer. That will serve as a kickball tournament for young people to come together, but then it will also serve as a fundraiser for our Fairhope Rotary Youth Club. In our next term, the Junior Council is creating an Arts Ambassador program that will showcase Fairhope's young creators and a citywide service day. We're so excited to see where our next year is going to take us, and we wanted to thank everyone who has supported us and brought us to where we are today. As of right now, I'd like to recognize our newest additions. One of them could not make it here today, but girls, when I call your name, please come up here. Jack Marlowe was not able to come today also. Isabella McCormick. You can stand over there. You can stand right there. And Isabella Tran. anyways, we just wanted to say thank you to you all for making all of this possible. Thank you.
All right, public participation is still open. Is there anyone else?
Stacy Sheehan Wilson, 54 North Church Street. I want to talk about 26. I am coming from the pool, Point Clear tennis court, and I think it's unreasonable that I drive from town, which is beautiful and affluent, and clearly we're spending our money on parks and all the things we're supposed to, and then I go through this void of kudzu, I think it's called, from Colorado. I just feel that I don't understand the politics that were so eloquently discussed by my fellow citizen, but I do know that if you have the mayor getting a survey done by professionals who do this, and you disregard it entirely because seemingly from your opinion, sir, unreasonable to me. And I haven't attended a lot of council city meetings, as you were sharing. If you're new, the lawyer doesn't seem new, and yet he didn't seem to know about what you were speaking about with this 28. It shouldn't be that he's getting paperwork on a Friday to come to a meeting on a Wednesday. So coming as a total novice to this experience, if blustering and overconfidence and conceit is what I'm supposed to rely on in your presentation, I'm going to go with expertise, outside opinion, and heart. And I think 26 needs to go in an underserved community. It is such an opportunity for all those beautiful kids, and I really hope you reconsider or consider or however that's going. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, I'll close public participation. Remember, if you have anything else to bring forth before the council, you may do so at the conclusion during public participation, conclusion of tonight's meeting. Council comments.
Yes, thank y'all. Thank y'all for sticking with us so far for this first eventful hour and 15 minutes. I want to first apologize because I don't think the unfortunate bickering that those that are here and that those that are watching online had to watch at the start of this meeting is what you deserve as a city, and I don't think it's the most beneficial way to accomplish what we're here to do. This is a business meeting. We are all professionals in our own right, and there is a way to do business and then a way not to. And in my personal opinion, shouting over each other is not the best way to do it. And so let me start by saying I'm sorry that you had to watch that. I'm sorry I had to. But then I want to talk some specifics about some of the things that have been brought up. And unfortunately, again, there's a lot of bad information that gets circulated. To our last speaker, the idea that these recommendations were made regarding number 26, the purchase of parkland, that these recommendations were made by the mayor and by professionals and that they were disregarded by the city council. It couldn't be further from the truth. When that was presented to us, my recollection is that it was a unanimous support by the city council and that we were all excited about the prospect of being able to purchase this property in this portion of town and do something great for not only that community, but the entire Fairhope community. As a member of the rec board, I can tell you that we need property immediately. And so there is some urgency to that. And we spent a lot of time looking at this Twin Beach property. And part of that delay was the negotiation on price. And we did the same thing with that piece of property that's set for the agenda tonight for the other piece, which is to get an appraisal. Because, and even though I agree with what most of you have echoed, which is it's not always all about the money, and it's not. But when you are spending taxpayer dollars, sometimes that is what it's about. And you can pay more for a certain piece of property than it's worth, but how much more? At what point does that become a reckless use of city resources? And so in this particular circumstance, we decided after a failed negotiation with the landowner that it was most prudent to view other options. So we didn't disregard anything. We tried. We went back and spent months in the process of trying to get it to a point where we could reach an agreed upon price that satisfied both the landowner and the community. We couldn't do it. Now, Mr. Ripp, I've seen countless articles from you about the city overpaying for the airport, paying more than appraised value. So I know that you have to agree there's a certain point where we can't waste city resources.
I'm anxious for you to appraise it, right?
Yes, sir.
You're right.
But what I'll tell you, though, is I agree with what's been brought up by the community, that this is an opportunity, but not just for the city, but for the landowner. And I agree again that it's not all about the money, and I'm hoping that the landowner has heard this conversation that we've had tonight, and maybe this will encourage them to think less about the money and more about the impact on the community, and maybe then we can reach an agreed upon price that works for everybody. All right, thank you, Mr. Smith, I appreciate that. As far as the conservation easement, I can tell you this very simply. Without any clear legal authority to do so, I'm not in favor of moving forward with that. I mean, that's an easy answer. You know, the idea of a conservation easement in general sounds like a good idea. And that is because, and I mentioned this to some of you that reached out to me in the last couple of days, is, you know, the people of New York City had the foresight to create something like this in Central Park, without of which there'd be no green space left. And so the idea of this, in general, is to preserve, not to eliminate the property. Now, maybe it is premature, because at this point, and I think this is part of a lengthy process that is expected to be considered, is that there are numerous meetings that need to take place with both our city staff, and I spoke to some last week about the potential utility easements that would be necessary for that piece of property in the future. But for what the public envisions the uses to be for that property, because a lot of the things that were said are true. Once you lock in a conservation easement, what the suggested or allowable uses for that property are, it's over. They can't be changed forever. And so there is absolutely no need to rush that type of decision. And I don't think what's on the agenda tonight is expected to do that. It is just the first step in numerous steps to get there. But until we have a clear idea of whether or not that's even legal, there's nothing to consider, in my opinion. And so, again, I'd like to encourage a lot of you, and I want to say something about Corey Martin. He was one of our last speakers, and I have had the benefit of knowing Corey since he moved here. I didn't know he had just moved here when we met, but I had not lived here long. And Corey does a lot of great work in this community. Corey leads the boys club at the intermediate school for grades 4, 5, and 6. And there are, you know, I would guess about 100 to 100 or so boys that attend these Friday morning meetings with him, and he teaches them and has speakers come in. I've been fortunate enough to speak to the group myself, and I see the kind of work he does with these kids. And if you haven't seen it, it's really something to see. And you know, I spoke to him at length today, and I agree with him in principle. But again, there has to be something that works for everybody in the community, and right now the price just didn't work out. But I'm hopeful that maybe there will be some movement in that regard, because the city needs property. It's going to continue to need property as we grow. And in my opinion is we can get it and keep it so that we can have a use for it in the future, then maybe that's worthwhile. But anyway, that's all I've got. Thank you.
I just want to clarify two things. One, this is not tax dollars. This is impact fees. And secondly, the only comp for this property was sold a few months before we started negotiating, just right down the road, the exact same price he's asking. Again, this property would be very hard to find a comp. So he's not asking, the family's not asking for something extraordinary. They're asking for the going price.
And I would just to clarify, and Mayor and I have had this discussion, she's not an appraiser, neither am I. That's why we hire professionals to do it, and we rely on those professional opinions in making the decisions that we make. So they're not emotional decisions. They are logical and reasoned and supported decisions.
Man, I hate following Jay because it looks like he just looked over my shoulder and copied my notes, but, all right. So also wanted to speak on item 26. We were unanimous in buying that Twin Beach property. I mean, the location, that was my preference for location. We felt like that would be a good opportunity. It was in an area that we felt might benefit from turning that into parkland. We went through the appraisal process, and we hired a appraisal management company just so that we wouldn't directly engage an appraiser, just trying to keep this as transparent and fair as we could. So we got an appraisal to make sure what we were paying for the property was, reasonable. And based on the appraisal we received from a very reputable appraiser in our area, we were going to be paying 35 to 40% above appraised value. And that was just too much. So we suggested, go back to the seller, see if they'll come down on their price. Just tell them, here's where we are at an appraisal. What are they willing to do? And, waited a little while, then came back. What did they say? They won't budge. So we said, well, okay. Then we sat around for a little while and thought, well, what do we do? Do we try something else, or we wait them out a little bit? And still, they won't budge. So for us to acquire that property, we would have to pay about 40% above the appraised value from an independent third-party appraiser. So we've located additional property, and we've engaged the same process through the appraisal management company, engaged with an appraiser, waiting to see what that one comes out to say. But, if it was close, I think I'd be willing to have stretched, 5%, maybe even 10%, but 35 or 40% above market value, you just can't justify that. I mean, you just can't. If that seller would get in reason with, a price that was in line with the appraised value, I'd be up for considering both. I don't know that everybody would, but if we were able to, I'd be willing to purchase more. They're not going to have any more opportunities to build more land, so I don't see how that would hurt. But right now, 40% off, that's a no-go. Item 28, I think that there have been a lot of good comments made. I think Jay made some good points. Specifically, my thought, though, was that, 150 plus years ago, they set 800 acres aside in New York City. There's and that property was worth a lot then. There's no telling what that's worth today. But, sometimes you have to have the foresight to look not 10 years, 20 years down the road, not during my lifetime, but I'm thinking about my children, their children. At some point, Fairhope is going to want to have that land as parks, trails, just green space. I mean, that's just something that's going to be short supply of. And I think that long-term, we've got to get that property right. I mean, once you enter into a conservation easement, that is a done deal in perpetuity. So I'm all for getting public input and making sure we get it right. I think that there's some misconceptions over what is being called for on the agenda, and I just would say I really do think we need to preserve that property in perpetuity. If we have to slow down to get it right, I'm fine with that, but I think in the end result still needs to be that we're saving that property for use for the citizens in an undeveloped manner, for the most part. I mean, trails, botanical garden, I mean, I think those things are fine, but I just think we need to look really, really long range with that. So that's all I've got.
Councilman Brown?
Thank you. First of all, I'm very surprised that we fill the council chambers when talking about a conservation easement and buying parkland in the city of Fairhope. I'd understand if we were taking an offer on the triangle to a developer, but seriously, people were putting in a conservation easement to preserve that property from now until the end of Fairhope, whenever the good Lord comes back. Who would be opposed to that? First of all, 26, most of my points have been made. I do want to make a correction. Impact, Mayor said, is not paid with tax money, it's paid with impact fees. The government does not earn money. Everything is gained by taxes. Impact fee is a tax on developers and builders. I took two engineers independently to both parcels that the city was looking at acquiring for parklands. Didn't tell them any specifics. I said, I want you to look at this parcel. We're looking at buying parks, all the different aspects, parking, access, layout, topography. Which ones would you recommend? Both recommended the other parcel. Item 28, the city paid Thompson Engineering, I believe it was in 2012, to do a watershed study on how to protect Fly Creek. Raise your hand if you're against protecting Fly Creek. I didn't think so. Part of that protection was a conservation easement, which we're trying to start that process. Some of these same people have been raising all kind of hell about apartments and other things being developed on the creek, and now we're trying to protect it. I don't get it. Conservation easement has been discussed multiple times in the work session. I know it's been on the work session agenda once. It's not being paid with tax money. A donation was made, not by Arthur Cordy, to pay for the legal fees to start the process of getting the easement established. And last, I hope Mr. Bauer's representatives will seriously consider the land swap prior to tonight's vote on number 29. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman Brown. Councilman Boone?
Well, I guess I could reiterate what everybody said so far, because I agree with it, but instead, I believe we're under a misconception that when we vote on item 26 and 28, all that will be set in concrete. What you have to understand is we are going to buy some property for the rec, we have to, for the rec board. We have to buy the property. But we have to get information for the best decision in order to make the best decision out there. And as far as the conservation easement, this is not a vote that we're going to put it in a conservation easement. This is a vote to get a plan on how to do it and what to do when we want to put it in it so that we can protect that watershed for Fly Creek. That's all it is. It's just a form of trying to get more information so we can make informed decisions on those two items. And everybody's acting like this is going to be set in stone, and it's not. This is just a starting process to get more information so as to make an informed decision on what property to buy, which would be the best for the city of Fairhope, and how to start and protect the property on Fly Creek.
Councilman Brown, did you have one more comment?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, council members, I can't add anything. You guys covered it all. I think you did a great job. I hope that the people understand that we're all trying to make the best decisions for this city. We're not trying to make political decisions. I don't know anybody that sits up here that's trying to make decisions based on politics. We're trying to make the best, most informed decisions that we can. I do want to touch on something that I do fear, and this is probably a little bit more political, so you could accuse me of that now, but I know that in the special call meeting, we reiterated the treasurer's job description. We also reiterated where the treasurer and them would sit, and I haven't seen any movement on that, and I know that wouldn't happen. Excuse me?
You're so petty.
I don't know if we're going to see movement on that, but as the legislative body of this government that creates the job descriptions and expects the employees to do the jobs that are defined within reason. I know that there's some flexibility in that, and the mayors do some flexibility in that, but the mayor's duties are to execute the actions taken by the council, and I would certainly hope that we're going to see that. I would certainly hope that all of the resolutions that were passed will be executed by the mayor, and I look.
No offices will be moved.
I look forward to seeing that more cooperation in what the council has asked to be done. So, with that, I'll close council comments, and we will move up to the much-anticipated rest of the agenda. Number 5 is a public hearing, which is an ordinance amending zoning ordinance number 1253. A request to zone the property of the Teachers Retirement System of Alabama to tourist resort. Concurrent with annexation to the city of Fairhope, the property is generally located west of South Section Street on the south side of Twin Beach Road in Fairhope, Alabama. Property to be known as Colony at the Grand, with a parcel containing 99.15 acres, more or less. Mr. King?
And thank you, Council. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Council President. I'll wait for introduction.
Yeah, let me get the ordinance introduced, please.
I'll introduce it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
And thank you, Council. This will be the first reading of this request for annexation, conditional annexation to a tourist resort district. What we'll show first is this is the City of Fairhope zoning map. The subject properties that accompany this development are outlined in dark blue. You will note that these are unzoned Baldwin County. And moving on to the aerial photograph, we've shown the same properties in crosshatched and called out the PPIN numbers for them. You'll notice the far eastern property, portions of it borders on South Section Street, portions of the northwest area border on Twin Beach Road. And Council, what we do, show you this map right here. This was as of January of this year. This is the existing Colony at the Grand development, and it may be a bit difficult to see on your screens, but this shows the 5 existing, it shows the various zones that accompany the tourist resort district, the low-rise areas, and the various other areas. And it shows the existing phases, the existing 5 phases of that development. This is another map showing the subject property, most of the subject property. You'll notice there's a match line. There is a match line right here that you'll see on the next slide, just to give you, stand it out against a plain white background. And then this is the balance of the property, so you can see the relationship between the new property. Just some brief information on the background. Mr. Tim Lawley is the engineer of record for this property. You'll see, of course, 99.15 acres. What I'd call the council's attention to, of course, this is also owned by the Retirement Systems of Alabama, the Teachers Retirement System specifically. The application was initially considered by the Planning Commission on March 12th, and during that meeting, the Planning Commission requested that the applicant conduct an additional community meeting, further reviewing the conditions of annexation. That was conducted on March 28th at the Boys and Girls Club on Young Street. 2 Planning Commission members were in attendance for that meeting. This was just additional community engagement requested by the Planning Commission for this action. What I do here, Council, is just summarize the difference in acreage. And you'll see on the left column on the slide the various acreages that make up the current development. On the right, you'll notice that the low-rise district grows by that approximately 99 acres. What I'd like to do is talk about density very, very briefly. The existing TR district is 3.5 units per acre, which is actually mandated in the zoning ordinance and set to 3.5 units per acre. And if you'll see in the slide right there that the net effect of adding the additional property would actually reduce the units per acre development density down to 3.0 units per acre. And as you see right there, that's calculated by 861 total units on 286.8 acres. And so, of course, the staff recommendation for approval of that case was originally recommended to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, their recommendation on April 1st of this year, they unanimously recommended approval of this zoning change and forwarding to the City Council for consideration. They added a condition of approval, and staff concurs with that. It limits this development to single-family residential uses within the low-rise residential district. In the zoning ordinance, the low-rise residential does have the provision for other uses. The Planning Commission's recommendation was to limit it to single-family. And then for the council's information, also on April 1st, Phase 6 of Colony at the Grand, which will occur or would occur on this same piece of property, the next phase of development. That subdivision case was also approved by the Planning Commission on April 1st. One of their conditions is that the developer install sidewalks along Section Street wherever their subject property fronts upon Section Street. And with that, council, I'm happy to answer questions on behalf of staff. And as we said, Mr. Lawley is also here on behalf of the developer.
Okay. Mr. King, I have one quick question. On the tourist resort zoning, what type of green space requirements do we have on that tourist resort? I know that this is not a site plan, but just looking to the future.
Yes, sir. And so it is captured within the zoning ordinance. And if you can indulge me just a brief second, I'll find it and read it for you.
Okay.
So all TR districts shall provide at least 20% open space and/or green space for the TR districts.
20%, huh?
Yes, sir.
Oh, very good.
Yes, sir. Article 5 of the zoning ordinance in Section G is the TR district.
Okay. Questions, council, for Mr. King before we open the public hearing? Okay.
Thank you, sir.
If you'll stay close, I will open the public hearing. If you'd like to speak to this proposed zoning change, please come forward to the podium and state your name or address for the record.
Good evening. My name is James Black. Address is 18674 Twin Beach Road. Will I see the staff recommendation that's been presented before you? I think it's hasn't led to the full discussion that would happen in the community as a result of the community outreach discussion with the developer and all the discussion points that were made during the Planning Commission meeting. I forget the exact date, to which there was a serious concern about the sewage and the plan for the sewage that would need to be implemented with this further development. And the fact that it runs down the hill and to the corner of Twin Beach on the turn there, where it's an already overcapacitated sewer system that already lets off and emits a very strong pungent sound. I would welcome anybody to drive down that road at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you'll be able to smell it. And several city folks have come out and looked at it, and I believe they concur that there's a problem. But yet now we want to build 200 more houses and have that same sewer run downstream or downhill for the convenience of the city, essentially, or the developer, one of the two, at the expense of the citizens that are living on that corner. This has already been discussed as a underrepresented or disenfranchised, I'd like to say, community. So I would like to see a little bit more thought and consideration to that community before you build this tourist area that's going to be a closed community as well, which I think is, if you approve this as is, then you, city council members, are playing into the gentrification playbook of every big corporate enterprise that takes advantage of communities such as the Fairhope community in that area. So I would like to see some more consideration. We've had conversations with the developer. However, RSA has yet to present themselves at any of the meetings, which I believe, as the investor in this property, they are the ones that have the responsibility to talk to the community, not the architect engineer that's doing the work on their behalf. So all of their points that were raised by the citizens have yet to be discussed and agreed to by the architect firm, because RSA has been silent. And so we would like to see this held until we get concurrence from RSA that they are working on the issues that the citizens have addressed, not just the sidewalks. That's a small concern, although it's a very big concern, but the representation, the gentrification of that area is a big concern, as well as the fact that it's a closed community, won't have access for the other citizens to go onto the property, and the sewer that will then run downhill and stink up that smaller community. So I hope they will take some time to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Public hearing is still open. Okay, seeing no one else, I'll close the public hearing. Council, do you have any further comments, questions?
Is Mr. Peterson still here?
He is here.
Buford, has there been any discussion about the sewage issue that was brought up?
And so, thank you, and council members understand, of course, we're here tonight to discuss the conditional annexation. And I understand it is confusing because we consider multiple items during the same planning commission meeting. And so the infrastructure requirements are, of course, a function of the subdivision process. And so all of that was vetted during the subdivision process, and specifically Phase 6 that I referenced earlier. So the various upgrades, the new services they'll provide, the new lift station that will go in, all of that was carried out during that subdivision approval. And council members, if it's the pleasure of the council to let this lay over as is normal custom on these types of things, we're happy to beef up the slides when we return to the next meeting and provide a bit more information about the infrastructure that's going in as part of the subdivision. We're happy to do that. We're happy to do that and answer those questions in a bit greater detail. That way we can speak it into the record about the infrastructure going in.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, council, as customary, we'll let this lie over until the next council meeting for further consideration. We'll move on to item number 6, which is a public hearing of an ordinance to amend zoning ordinance number 1253, Article 3 zoning districts, Section B, allowed uses, Table 3-1. The use table will be hereby amended to show restaurants in the M1 Light Industrial District and Section D. Special conditions to include restaurants and accessory bars in the M1 Light Industrial District, and Article 9, Section C, defined terms to include the definition of cater. And Mr. Jeffries, before you get started, I want to just preface this, and you may be going to cover all of this, but I wanted to say that as a member of the Industrial Development Board, I asked the Planning Commission to delay a rezoning request of a restaurant that was going to be in M1 to B2, and it wasn't allowed to be in M1. And being that we have so few M1 parcels in our city, I asked that they consider allowing a restaurant use, which seems to be, would be a pretty good use. If you go, say, for instance, into an airport and you go into a restaurant, you've gone into a restaurant into a light industrial district. And we don't have any restaurants at our airport now, but if somebody wanted to open up a restaurant there, they wouldn't be allowed to do that. So we made the recommendation, or the Industrial Development Board, and I actually wasn't at the meeting, but they made the recommendation to the Planning Commission to propose this change to the zoning ordinance, and that's kind of where it led from there. So rather than scavenging some of our M1 land that we covet, it would just allow for the restaurant to be constructed in M1. And this stemmed from a property on Nichols Avenue across the street from the Fairhope Brewery. Did I get that all right, Mike?
Yes, sir.
All right.
You nailed it.
Conclude your report.
Thank you, Council President, Mayor. My name is Mike Jeffries, planning technician for the City of Fairhope in the Planning and Zoning Department. Council President, or do you introduce it as well? Right.
I'll
Somebody
introduce the ordinance,
please.
I'll introduce it.
Thank you, Clerk.
Now that it's introduced, and I've introduced myself, we'll continue on. And Mr. Burrell pointed out all of the highlights that this spurred from a previous zoning change case that was to try to take a piece of M1, piece of zone property, and rezone it to a B2 piece of property in order to facilitate a possible restaurant use. And after consideration for the Planning Commission and input from the IDB, we chose to amend the zoning ordinance to allow a restaurant use inside of the M1 Light Industrial District. Now, this was also with special conditions for the use. So unlike a allowed use by right, where just any restaurant is allowed to be on it, there are certain restrictions, and we'll have to go in front of the Board of Adjustments for approval for that restaurant in an M1 type use. So the location requirements are in any M1 light industrial district, and the site requirements are the prohibition of drive-throughs. So restaurants shall not contain any type of drive-through window or pickup windows. We're looking for must be a sit-down style type of restaurant. When we did this zoning change to amend the text inside this article, We also noticed that inside the restaurant definition, there was a term for caterer that was not defined and kind of left a vague area inside the zoning ordinance. So we took this as an opportunity to clear that up. And we're also adding the definition to caterer to include any person or entity who operates from a permitted food facility where food is prepared or stored, then delivered and or served off premises. And another point to making this caterer definition is that we have had some entrepreneurs try to get a business license underneath kind of the caterer umbrella, and without a clear definition of what it was it before, if it was under a restaurant, it was required that it was a sit-down, dine-in establishment. Now with the definition of caterer, it now allows for a type of restaurant use that is just preparing the food in a certified food kitchen to be able to serve off premises, such as a barbecue place where they might be able to do catering or different functions for weddings or different possibilities for that. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for staff, council? Okay. Mike, if you'll stand by, we'll open up the public hearing. If you'd like to speak to this item, please come forward to the podium and state your name and address for the record, please. Okay, seeing no one, I will now close the public hearing. Council, any final comments? Okay, we'll let this lay over for final consideration at the next meeting. We'll move on to item 7, which is a public hearing of an ordinance to amend zoning ordinance number 1253, Article 9, Section C, define the terms to include the following revised and new definitions: front lot line, front yard, frontage, rear yard, and waterfront lot. Mr. Jeffries. Will somebody introduce the ordinance, please?
I'll introduce it.
Thank you, sir.
Again, Mike Jeffries, Planning and Zoning Department. What we have tonight for you is some proposed text amendments to basically include a waterfront lot definition. Previously, we do not have a definition for waterfront lot. A lot of, as everybody here knows, if you live on Mobile Bay, your front yard is, colloquially referred to as whatever side the water's on. Your backyard is the roadside. That's where your garage is. That's where you enter and everything. But the front yard has always been the bay side. Our zoning ordinance requires that any accessory structure be built behind the rear building line of the structure, where the front lot line previously, by definition, was contiguous to the right-of-way line, which would be at the street and not at the water. So when several people, it has been historically accepted that the water line on Mobile Bay is the front property line, so we wanted to actually put that in the zoning ordinance as a definition for the waterfront lot line that states, for the waterfront lot, it shall be any lot or parcel adjacent to Mobile Bay. So that'll clean up some confusion, misconceptions that we have, and some challenges the planning and zoning staff faces when looking at different site plans, and the building department looking at building plans on where the front setback, rear setback is, and where accessory structures are located. And with this, we also made some amendments to some different definitions that we had, just to clarify and make sure there were not any contradictions that we were creating. Those included the changing of the definition to front lot line, front yard, frontage, and rear yard. If you'd like, I could read through each definition. I think you all have a copy of it. And if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer it for you. And the Planning Commission recommended for these additions.
Mr. Jeffries, on the waterfront lot definition, it says any lot or parcel adjacent to Mobile Bay. Is there no need to define any other waterfront lots that might be on a tributary such as Fly Creek or a potential lakefront lot? We don't really have any lakes around here. There's one out near the airport that's not in the city limits yet, but there's always a potential for that.
We tossed that around and discussed that with the Planning Commission, and in the planning and zoning, areas on Fly Creek, areas on Rock Creek, Fish River, which is in our planning jurisdiction, not in our property, but typically the front yard on a riverfront or on a creek bed isn't the same that it is on Mobile Bay. People have accessory structures such as pier houses, houses close to the river, to get there. On Mobile Bay, they don't want to obstruct their view of the bay, of the sunset, so all of their sheds or accessory structures, if you drive down, are typically between the house and the right-of-way line of the actual street. So it was considered. We also took in the fact that it would be hard to define what other waterway, if you said, well, I live on a creek, and you have a creek bed, or you live on a gully that seldomly, contains water every now and again, does that then classify that as a waterfront lot? And just for the concerns that we have from citizens, they've always been on houses or parcels of land that have been on Mobile Bay and not on one of these tributaries such as Fly Creek or Rock Creek.
So, Robert, if you ever go to sell your house, you cannot put waterfront.
I like the way the ordinance is written.
Any questions? All right. We'll open the public hearing then. If you'd like to speak to this zoning ordinance proposed change, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Diane Thomas, 23389 Main Street.
Which is a waterfront lot.
I have a waterfront lot. I would just like to know, what are the practical ramifications for me as a property owner with these redefinitions? What does that mean in plain English? What could I do or not do now?
What it means in plain English is when a house is to be constructed new or to be remodeled, every zoned piece of property has a certain setback for that zoning that gives a required front setback, a required rear setback. Depending on the front lot line is where the setback line is determined from. So for example, we'll use a lot on Mobile Bay. If this is not passed, your front yard was actually between the right-of-way line of the road and between the front of that house. So if you wanted to build an accessory structure that was not attached to the house, the zoning regulations require that it is in the rear yard located behind the rear principal structure. You would be forced to put a shed or detached garage on the bay side as opposed to being closer to the road where it's more practicable for the lots that are on Mobile Bay. Does that help answer your question?
Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing I will close the public hearing. I'll let this lay over for final consideration at the next council meeting. Item number 8 is final adoption of an ordinance to amend ordinance number 1537, known as the sign ordinance, chapter 18.5 signs, section 18.5-3 sign permits and exceptions, specifically B10 regarding temporary off-site directional signs, which was introduced at the May 13th, 2019 City Council meeting. Mr. King had mentioned in the work session that we may have to revisit this somewhat once the Greeno Road overlay district is established, and I think that, this is, a first cut, and I could definitely see revisions being made, but I think that it's a good first cut, and we appreciate Baldwin County Board of Realtors staying on us and being diligent, sticking around until 8 o'clock tonight for this vote on this, and also for the willingness of the realtors to adhere to this and actually help us write this and want to be good citizens in our city. So we thank you for that. So, council, I will ask for a motion for final adoption.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, clerk, if you'll call the question.
Council President?
Aye.
Place 2?
Aye.
Place 3?
Aye.
Place 4?
Aye.
Place 5?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, council. Item number 9 is a resolution. The city council approves an additional planner position for the planning department and amends the budget to fund this position. This was mentioned at the last council meeting. This one position was inadvertently left off. The job description of positions would be planning and zoning manager and development services manager with a grade of pay of 26. I will entertain a motion to pass this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay. I'm only stating that in the fact that I am sticking to my guns, that I want all these things brought up before the Personnel Board.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Boone. Motion carries. Item number 10 is a resolution that the City Council approves and authorizes the mayor and the city to enter a grant agreement with the Federal Aviation Administration to extend the terminal area access road to the new hangars, that should be hangars, or on the east side of H.L. Sonny Callahan Airport. The FAA portion of the grant is a minimum of $325,000 or an amount not to exceed $566,950. We discussed this in the work session. This is no cost to the city of Fairhope. The Fairhope Airport Authority will pay 5% of this cost, and they do have the money in the bank for that. So I'll entertain a motion to pass this and approve the mayor and the city to enter in this.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, council. Item number 11 is a resolution authorizing signees on all City of Fairhope accounts. You'll see a list there in your tab. It'll be the mayor, myself, the city clerk, and the city treasurer. Basically, we're just adding the city treasurer to the signers on the account, so I'll entertain a motion. Pass this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item 12 is a resolution. The city treasurer is hereby authorized to execute a payment aggregator service agreement for the city of Fairhope with Open Edge Payments, as sole source provider for Tyler Technologies for credit card payments over the counter and virtual, which is required for the implementation of the court fee billing for the municipal court through the Munis system for the Encode software. Would anybody like Ms. Olmstead to expand on this? Basically allows the municipal court to take the credit card payments. What it allows. Get a little more efficient. Be a cost of $2,085. And I would entertain a motion to pass this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item 13 is a resolution accepting the public streets, public right-of-ways, and all of Fairhope's public utilities located in public right-of-ways within Van Antwerp Park subdivision for maintenance, and to authorize Mayor Karen Wilson to execute the maintenance and guarantee agreement between the City of Fairhope and Van Antwerp Park LLC. Routine business. I'll entertain a motion to accept the streets and right-of-ways.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, council. Item 14 is a resolution that the city council hereby approves and authorizes the city of Fairhope to execute a memorandum of understanding between Baldwin County Board of Education and the city of Fairhope for use of the academy at the Fairhope Airport, also known as the academy located at the H.L. Sonny Callahan Airport. Sounds like I'm repeating myself again. As a staging area to temporarily house up to 80 employees, cots, and necessary equipment, and to stage municipal vehicles that are necessary for immediate emergency reaction to a named storm. Also described in the work session, council, I'll entertain a motion to pass this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Item 15 is a resolution. City Council approves the selection of O'Donnell and Associates for professional consulting services to monitor the groundwater levels at wells number 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9 for the Water Department, and approves and accepts the not-to-exceed amount of $3,600 and authorizes Mayor Karen Wilson to execute an annual renewable one-year contract with O'Donnell and Associates, annual groundwater level monitoring at the well fields. $3,600, council, for necessary monitoring. I'll entertain a motion to pass this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, council. Item 16 is a resolution to award a bid for disaster debris removal monitoring services 2019 for the Public Works Department to True North Emergency Management, LLC, with the highest evaluation total weighted scores in the event that we have a disaster requiring this service. Also explained to us at the work session, somewhere between 87.5% and 92.5% to be reimbursed by FEMA. I'll entertain a motion to award the bid.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Item 17 is a resolution to award a bid for substation 15 kilovolt vacuum circuit breakers for project number EL 3-17, upgrade to the electric system, substations and distribution circuitry, bid number 22-19 to Siemens Industry with a total bid proposal of $157,619. Any questions for Mr. Peterson? I think this is coming out of the $1.5 million budgeted for substation upgrades this year, so I'll entertain a motion to approve this expense.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, please say nay. Okay, motion carries, thank you. Item 18 is a resolution to award the bid for substation regulators for project EL 3-17, upgrade to electric system, substations, and distribution circuitry, bid 21-19 to Siemens Industry with a total bid proposal of $416,220. Just real quick, these are all related to our substation upgrades. They're all related to the money that we budgeted for those this year, correct? Okay.
Yes, it's road rated capacity of the station, road rated capacity of the regulators go with it.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Peterson? Well, that's a lot of money, council, to be throwing around, but it's, been pre-approved. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to award the bid for the regulators. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Item 19 is a resolution to award a bid for Fells Avenue Lift Station Rehab Substation to Cunningham Delaney Construction LLC with a total base bid proposal of $561,500. Mr. Peterson, I do have one question. It says a base bid proposal of $561,000. Are we anticipating some add-ons to that bid proposal?
No, so there were some alternates that were bid that we could actually reduce the price a little bit, but we would be using some pumps that we don't currently have in the system, the Wheelo pumps versus the flight pumps. And then we had some other options for the different types of fencing. We talked about a wrought iron fence around it. This is one of the base of Fells Avenue.
Right.
And then we are going with the impervious pavement that's in, it's actually cheaper than the asphalt, so we're going to stick with that. But I know it sounds like it's gold-plated based on the price, and the price actually did surprise me quite a bit. But what we are going to wind up doing is reviewing and doing some value engineering as we start to develop standards for lift stations. And in this particular case, we do have a 12-foot diameter wet well, so we do have a little extra storage at the bottom of the hill, so we have some time to react. And we tried to make it as economical as we could. We're trying to connect everything to the existing infrastructure. And, we're going to work on how to make the things a little less expensive next time, but right now I don't think we have a choice in trying to go forward and get this one underway.
No, go ahead.
Are you saying the fence is part of this bid?
Yes.
And I will say, they did receive 3 responses, and this is the lowest responsible bid by about $36,211.
Right.
Is this a fiberglass tank or a concrete tank?
Fiberglass.
Way more better.
And
dare I ask how much over we had estimated?
No.
This?
I was anticipating somewhere in the mid-300 range, actually, and there's several $100,000 over that. But, I'm going to find out where we can save money and where we can't, and we're going to apply that, learning curve to the next opportunity.
Okay. All right, council. Any other questions, Mr. Peterson?
Yeah, I think I mentioned in the works, I'd like to have somebody's input on how to screen that rather than a wrought iron fence. To me, I just don't think a wrought iron says Fairhope right there on the bay. Get Christian Poyce's opinion or something to how to screen it and keep people out of there as well.
I'm gonna ask Denise, what is the height of the fence? Is it 6 feet?
No, actually, it's 4.
4 feet. So there's a 4-foot wrought iron. And what we were trying to do is protect the visual aesthetic from across the street. We did have an alternate for a privacy fence, wood privacy fence. I just don't know that, I mean, you know, we can discuss that later and then we can, but I think we need to think about how we want it to look, and, you know, we're gonna try to keep everything landscaped around the electric panel, and we hope to have a little odor control feature in there, but, we're open to any comments.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Okay, you've heard the answers. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the bid, awarding of the bid.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Item 20 is a resolution to award the bid for the new pickleball courts to SC Stagner Contracting with a total bid proposal of $76,428. Council, I'd ask you to reconsider this. It seems like an awful lot for, it's 4 courts but the size of 1 tennis court, and I would ask to reject the bid and rebid this. And I've had staff feel the same way, so I can entertain a motion to award the bid, or we can entertain a motion to reject all the bids.
Motion to reject the bids.
Second.
Have a motion to reject the bids in a second. Discussion? Okay.
We just finished building tennis courts. What was a single tennis court on the last ones we just built? What was the price of those?
I don't recall. They didn't come to, even the clay courts, I don't think came up to $76,000 a court. The hydro courts did.
All right.
Any other questions or any other discussion?
We will be putting it out for rebid.
Mr. Cool, if we reject this bids, we would be putting it out for rebid?
Yeah, right away.
All right.
Perfect, okay. Clerk, I do want to ask you, though, if the resolution was to award the bid and we make a motion to reject the bids because we're on that agenda item, is that allowed without amending the agenda? I mean, just because of the way the resolution is stated?
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. Okay, I was wondering if we should, you want to amend the resolution? We could actually ask to amend the resolution to reject the bid, would make it more proper. I think so.
Because the only thing you got right now is either award it or not award it.
Right.
And
That's
if
what I
you
thought.
amend it to reject it, you're clear.
Okay, can I ask you to withdraw your motion, Councilman Conyers?
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, can I entertain a motion to amend the resolution to state to reject all bids for the pickleball courts and to put up for rebid? Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of amending the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, now I'll entertain a motion to approve the amended the amended resolution, which would say to reject all bids for the new pickleball courts and to put up for rebid.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion? Aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay, the amended resolution passes. Thank you, council. Item 21 is a resolution the City of Fairhope vote to procure a used generator set. That's a Caterpillar XQ230 with 7,092 hours for the water department. The equipment is available for direct procurement through the Sourcewell Purchasing Group contract. Therefore, it does not have to be let out for bid. It's already been nationally bid through Sourcewell's bid process at a cost of $50,000. Mr. Peterson, sorry, during the work session, you ran and got that resolution prepared for us, so appreciate that. So we didn't get to cover some of these actually in the agenda meeting. So where exactly is this generator set going?
This is going to be a trailer-driven generator set, and it's going to be able to operate the other water production facility that we don't currently have a generator for. We have two now.
Okay.
And then we'll have some larger lift stations that we'll be able to use it for too.
Okay, so it's portable then?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right. Council, any questions for Mr. Peterson? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
How many of these type of generators do we already have?
We have, I think, 5 lift stations with permanent generator sets there.
Uh-huh.
And we have 2 portable generators. This is the second one.
This will be the second one?
Yes, we have 80 lift stations.
I know. I need a few
We have
more.
2 portable pumps.
Gotcha.
And we make the most out of all of it.
That's right.
I was trying to find that. What was the capacity of that again, Richard?
The KW, I think that's 125 KW, but I may be wrong about that.
Okay. And that sounds like more than adequate, I would think.
It's pretty good size
125,000 watts to run the lift station.
Right, it's pretty good sized generator.
Well, so why do we need so much capacity? Is that for the
That's
water?
that's for when you have a
When you have
well
water?
and a service pump. There's 2 motors that will be running simultaneously, and that's part of that added KW load on the generator.
Okay.
With
I
lift
didn't mean to get
stations,
so
we'll just
technical,
run
but that
one.
just sounds like a mighty big generator.
And those are, and water production facility, those are 40, 50 horsepower motors that
Right.
are running those, but, and there's
Okay.
2 of them.
Okay. All right, council, I'll entertain a motion to approve the purchase of the used generator set.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, council. Item 22 is a resolution, of the City of Fairhope vote to procure a new upgraded stage lighting for the Civic Center from Showbiz Theatrical Services with a total cost of $43,065. This is a budgeted item, and it's slightly over budget. But don't blame them because they haven't gone to the Richard Johnson School of Budgeting just yet, where everything comes in under budget. Any questions for staff for that, council? Hearing no questions, I'll entertain a motion to purchase the upgraded stage lighting.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Item 23 is a resolution of the City of Fairhope vote to purchase a 2019 Chevy Tahoe PPV, including optional equipment and installed equipment and a lighting package for the police department. The type of vehicle needed is on the Alabama State Department of Purchasing bid list, therefore it does not have to be let out for bid, with a total cost of $41,396.58, and to purchase the Python dash-mounted radar from MPH Industries as the sole source provider for this equipment, with a total cost of $1,249, the total cost being $43,396.58. The insurance will reimburse us $19,273 for the total 2014 Chevy Tahoe. So it's unbudgeted, but this is replacing a wrecked police vehicle that we need to replacing a 2014 vehicle with a 2019 vehicle. So I'll entertain a motion for the purchase of this vehicle.
So moved.
Second.
I had 2 motions in 2 seconds there. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, council. Item 24 is a resolution. Mayor Karen Wilson is hereby authorized to execute the agreement with the Baldwin County Board of Education regarding the city's donation of $350,000 to the board for the use in the following schools: Fairhope Elementary, Intermediate, Middle, High, and J. Larry Newton. The donating funds are to be used strictly in conformance with the Fairhope Education Advisory Committee's approved list, which is attached to the agreement as Addendum A, and with the agreement. As you saw, council, it is for math and reading intervention coaches in an amount of $70,000. A little bit different at each school, but some of them are getting reading, some are getting math, some are getting both. So I believe this is the same appropriations that we made last year, Councilman Brown. And I also was very pleased this year that the Educational Advisory Committee finally brought some concrete results to the council for the expenditures that we were making for the first 4 or 5 years of these expenditures. We kept changing the strategy, so we never could get a couple of years under our belt to see if we moved the needle. And I believe that the teachers and the principals will testify that we moved the needle. So kudos to the EAC and all the teachers and principals and Board of Education for putting our money to good use there. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to execute the agreement with the Board of Education for the donation.
Second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. Motion carries. Item 25 is a resolution. The city treasurer is hereby authorized to pay the additional amount of $6,340.65 as a change order to the contract to Thompson Engineering, Inc., and to pay the remaining amount of $3,102.76 from the $87,560, which will be paid out of professional services budget line item. The total unpaid amount is $9,443.41 for these services. And Ms. Hanks, I'm going to ask you to try to explain that.
It's going to be very confusing, but this happened back in 2014 when the comprehensive plan update was being done, and it was approved for $87,560. We received a final bill in August of 2016 and a transitioning of planning director and city treasurer at that time. The bill for $9,443.41 was, I don't know, was not ever signed off on, and that was the final payment for that contract. And when this was presented to the Planning Commission, they asked for additional maps to be updated and some text, so an additional $6,340.65 bill came in. That one was signed off on inadvertently and paid, and now we have to fund the difference, which is the $9,443.41. So the remaining balance of the $3,102.76 from the $87,560 still has to be paid out.
$3,102.76.
Yeah, $3,102.76 and $6,340.65 as a change order to the contract.
Oh, all of that needs to be paid.
No, the total is $9,443.41, which is unbudgeted and unpaid.
You know, council, my thoughts are we have had a couple of these issues come up over the last few years, and I know that the question was whether or not that did the service provider do the work, and I don't know that anybody doubts that the work was done, and I think that regardless of the way that it was handled, is that we should pay our bills to people that they're owed to, and so even if it's maybe 5 years late, it was uncovered, and we don't do this to our local or any other corporation for that matter. So, council, any questions for Ms. Hanks? I'll entertain a resolution to pay the additional amount.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to pay the additional amount, $9,443.41. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. Item 26 is a resolution. The City Council approves the selection of equity valuation partners for professional appraisal services to prepare an appraisal on property for city parkland with a cost not to exceed TBD. We didn't know exactly what to put in there, what it would be. You could take out the TBD. You could just say you approve the selection of, and you could have the mayor negotiate the fee schedule for that, or approve the selection and the payment of the appraisal. What do you recall what the last appraisal cost?
I don't recall.
I mean, was it like $1,500 or $2,000 or something like that?
No, it'd probably be, maybe, it might be more than that, but probably in the 2,000 range.
2,000 range, or you want to put you could put a cost not to exceed maybe $5,000, and it'd certainly cover it.
Yeah, it'll be less than that.
But it ought to be a lot less than that?
Yeah.
Somebody want to make that motion, approves the selection with a cost not to exceed $5,000?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. Item 27 is a resolution. The City Council approves the hiring of a building inspection services company for the K1 Center with a cost not to exceed. We have this on there. We need to. We're getting close to the closing of this, and we thought it prudent to have a building inspection done, just to do our due diligence. I don't know if it's going to have any impact on whether or not, we move forward with that. I don't think it'll have any impact, but I think that it would be prudent to go ahead and have inspection done. So this says the hiring of a building inspection services company, and so I would ask staff if you have one to recommend, or mayor, if you have one to recommend. We could approve you to select that provider. We'll do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We definitely want to expedite it.
Okay, so we could amend that resolution, say the city council approves the hiring of a building inspection services company for the K1 Center as selected by the mayor. We could get rid of the cost not to exceed. Somebody amend the resolution to state that?
I'd like to amend.
Okay, motion to amend. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of amending the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. For final adoption of the amended resolution, I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And staff, I would just say, if you guys can, if you know somebody that's in that business, we didn't know anybody. We wanted to get it on here so we could move forward with that, closing. And while we don't have to hire them today, we need to do it pretty soon. So if y'all could help the mayor out with that, so ask you to do that. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay, item 28 is a resolution. The City Council authorizes Council President to execute a conservation easement agreement between the City of Fairhope and Weeks Bay Foundation for 2 conservation easements for the properties known collectively as the Dias/Triangle property, and to outline the terms of the easement transaction. The total cost of the conservation easement, due diligence, and closing fees for the property shall be $39,025. And before I entertain a motion, I hear you loud and clear, Councilman Robinson. There's a couple of ways that we could go on this resolution, but I want to hear from Weeks Bay Foundation. Maybe would have been helpful to hear a lot of this back during the public comment section, but they've been patient and waited for the agenda item. And then if we are not comfortable that, we don't have the clear legal standing, you can also put the caveat down in there that says you can negotiate the agreement pending the outcome. And so, my first question is, do we have a precedent? Do we have municipalities in the state of Alabama that have conservation easements?
Sure. So can everybody hear me okay? My name is Yael Gerard. I'm the director of the Weeks Bay Foundation, and we are currently working on conservation easements with several other municipalities that would be very similar to this and have, at this point, not reached any conflicts there with that process. They are not closed yet. They have not completed, but so far their legal counsel has not come across anything. Additionally, conservation easements are being placed on many properties throughout Baldwin and Mobile County as part of the NIFWIF BP oil spill requirements. So properties acquired with NIFWIF funds are being mandated to put conservation easements on top of those properties that are being purchased. So even though they are being purchased with the intent of conservation, they are adding that extra layer of a conservation easement on top of it. And many of those landholders are municipalities dealing with that.
But do you know of other entities that have entered into conservation easements with municipalities? You said you have several in the works right now.
That we are working on, right.
That you're working on, but do you know of any others that may have already been completed? I'm just trying to establish a precedent with any municipality, with any foundation for that matter.
Right.
Or any other executor of a conservation easement.
I understand that. And I cannot say that I know of a municipality that has an established easement currently not with our foundation and not with another foundation in the area that I know of that has it established. However, we haven't come across the legal issues, and I would have some comments that I'd like to make to address some of those things and some of the other things that were brought up, if that's acceptable.
And I'm going to make one more comment, and that is that I don't think they're called conservation easements, but we have encumbrances on all of our parklands right now established by single tax. When they donated the land to the city of Fairhope, they encumbered that land to be used for parkland in perpetuity. Thank you. So it's not unheard of, and I really like both of you using Central Park as an analogy in your council comments. That's exactly what I envisioned. I wasn't trying to sound conceited that I know better, but sometimes, you know, you must make the right decisions, just like our forefathers have made decisions to protect certain parts of America with the national park system. It's really no different.
If you don't mind, I'd like to be able to
Please.
just talk to the council and everyone who showed up and stayed here till 8:25 tonight on this topic. So the Weeks Bay Foundation, we were created in 1990 and have been working for land conservation. That is one of our major tenets of our mission. We are an accredited land trust, meaning that we are acknowledged by the Land Trust Alliance that governs over hundreds of land trusts across the United States as having the highest standards for accountability and transparency in our transactions. We are not a political organization. We are not lobbying for this or pushing for it. We are simply acting as an advocate for the resources in coastal Alabama and as an avenue for landowners to achieve habitat conservation. These landowners may be private landowners, businesses, or in this case, a municipality. I wanted to respond to just a couple of the public comments that were made. Some of them were noting that we do need to keep this ecosystem intact, that there's a quality of life here in coastal Alabama that we enjoy, that we are looking at a 44% growth in Fairhope in the last 8 years. And these are all things that we have to take into consideration with our long-term land use. In regards to the section 114720, the disposition of city-owned property, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but to me, there is no title transfer here. There is no, we are not owning this property. Some folks said that the city is giving away the property to the foundation. We will never own the title to the property. We are taking certain rights that the city has decided it doesn't need: strip mining, cutting down all the trees, commercial row agriculture, subdividing it for 100 home sites. Those would be the kinds of things that we would be accepting. So to us, that is a management strategy, not the disposition of property. In addition, Mr. Ripp's comment that Arthur Cordy has an easement with the Weeks Bay Foundation. We don't have an easement with Arthur Cordy on any piece of property. We have easements with multiple landowners in Baldwin County and in Mobile County. Arthur Cordy is not one of them, and I'm happy to discuss who we have easements with if it's necessary. It's all public record. In addition, the contract itself, when you go to hire someone to help you with a project, they can't start the work until you reach an agreement with them through a contract. That's all we're asking for at this point with the City Council, is that we can continue working on this with the representatives and the stakeholders, but we need to be ensured that if we are doing due diligence on this project and we're spending time crafting a conservation easement document, that we will be paid for the time that we spent on it. That's what this document is. We're not entering into an easement agreement tonight. As many folks have said, this is going to take quite some time, numerous steps, and it's going to be a starting point. This contract is a starting point to work with the city. The fees associated with it, these are things incorporated in our due diligence: an environmental site assessment, title update, something that's called a baseline documentation report that allows us to establish what is the baseline condition of the property at the time when we're discussing these permitted activities on there. And that allows us in the future to be able to legally defend the easement. If you don't know what you're starting with, how can you defend what the condition was and how it may have been negatively impacted? So that long-term stewardship and legal defense fund is the other portion of that. The terms of this easement have not been decided. They have not been discussed at length, and it is up to the city and the stakeholders and the partners to decide the terms of the easement. The foundation will certainly help guide, but we are not pushing for the terms to be any certain thing. Conservation easements are great because they are tailorable to what the landowner and their representatives want. Utilities, buildings, trails, parking lots, bathroom blocks, those are all feasible within the conservation easement. Our efforts are to maintain the most conservation value for the property while meeting the needs of the landowner and their representatives. And I do agree with Councilman Robinson that this is a binding document. You don't enter into it lightly, and we have no plan of entering into it lightly with the city until everything has been agreed upon. Because as it was stated, once you enter into it, it is binding, and you cannot change things in it that will reduce the conservation value later. As far as it becoming the foundation's property, I just need to say that again, we will not own this property. This is not something the city is giving to us where we now become the owner of it. And in that same vein, some people would say that, you're having a loss here. You're looking at giving this away. And people may believe that in that it isn't developable to the same extent anymore once you put an easement on it. But with the growth that this city and this county is experiencing, there comes a point when we have to decide if we're going to set aside some of these natural resources to be what they are, natural resources, to be amenities for the public and places that people can go to experience nature in their backyard. A centrally located green space has a tremendous amount of value in that it is going to increase property value, it increases the desirability of living near it. There have been studies that have shown that access to green space allows people to have healthier mental stability, healthier bodies, and a better quality of life. And as y'all mentioned, Central Park and national parks, setting aside land and our natural resources in that long-term foresight is how we got those national parks, city parks, coastal preserves, the things that people cherish about coastal Alabama, our beaches, rivers, and deltas. The lands that have not been developed around those waterways protect them. They protect them from flooding, they protect them from erosion, they provide scenic view sheds, and they allow for public recreation. That is the foundation's intention with all of the projects that we consider, and we hope to continue that with the city of Fairhope on this project. So, thank y'all for your questions.
Thank you very much, y'all. Questions to council?
No, I think you did a great job of explaining that. I too think it probably would have been very helpful for most of the crowd to hear that on the front end. But my concern still remains, and that is, even after hearing what you said, what I heard is we're doing it in other places. What I didn't hear is that we know that there is a legal basis to do that. And so my concern would be moving forward at the cost of $39,000 without knowing for sure whether it's something that we are certain the legalities exist that allow us to do it. That'd be my position on it. And Ken and I'm sitting here thinking about it, since we're not actually, and your point helped me think of this, is that since we're not actually transferring ownership to anyone else, that obviously will play a heavy role in what the legal analysis is. But from where I sit tonight, I think it would be the most prudent thing is to table this vote until we get a concrete legal answer to determine whether or not we can appropriately move this forward.
I'd have to agree with Jay. Do you think we could have an answer? I mean, there's no rush. We can wait a couple of weeks.
No rush
I mean,
from us
there's
either.
no rush from that. So like I said, we have a couple options. We could table it. We could move forward if, say that if it was found to be legally acceptable, then we can move forward. You could put that caveat in there as well. But then again, there's really no rush in 2 weeks either.
You may want to consider an AG opinion because you've got some precedent or some other law that kind of is contrary to what we're talking about with disposal, because you're not talking about straight up disposal, no title transfer, but there's specific law or statute that authorizes or mandates that city council is responsible for all management and control of real property. Now, I mean, it's real plain about that, but the question then becomes, is that a disposal of the property by entering into a conservation agreement? And I looked up briefly what Ken was talking about, and I found one Virginia AG opinion that said entering into a conservation easement is tantamount to the sale of the property, which would then throw us into what Ken's talking about. So it may be a situation where we want to get an AG opinion, and let them look at both sections or both statutes and say, can we enter into a conservation agreement? But the problem is, we really don't know what the conservation easement says right now. I was going to say, we kind of got a boilerplate from you the other day, but don't really know I would almost think you need to get down the line a little bit further with some of the ideas that you want to do before you do. I guess you could just say conservation easement and ask the AG.
It would be the council voting on the uses, so it would be mandated by the council as to what the uses are, and you're basically hiring a manager to make certain that whatever that plan that the council decided upon is carried out.
Well, and if you look at the scope of work proposal, I mean, maybe we look at doing a portion of this, I mean, because we don't have to do it today, it doesn't have to be done overnight. But, you know, the 19,000 of the 39,000 is stewardship and legal defense. Well, that's not going to come into play until
Right.
it's
Till-
closed.
Till the closing.
The $1,000 closing cost isn't going to come into play till then. The 2,000 legal review won't happen until we're comfortable that and even drafting the easement, so you can cut out about 25,000 pretty quick. I would say we still need, and the Environmental Advisory Board had brought up that they would like to start with getting at least a baseline documentation report, and, you know, we're going to need a survey. I assume if we don't already have one on file, we're going to need one at some point as we're trying to lay out whatever we're going to do with this property.
Well, are you going to need one if you're not going to put it into a conservation easement then? I mean,
Well, I mean, if you're going to do anything with it, you're probably going to need to know the exact layout. I mean, if you're going to put in trails or anything.
True.
I would think. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess if there's some reservation or hesitation, I guess I would say we should take a step back. But some of these other items, we might want to go ahead and move forward on, if not tonight, in the next meeting, to go ahead and get the ball rolling on them, because they're going to be things that we ought to have, whether or not we can go the route of a conservation easement.
I like your recommendation.
Thank y'all.
I'm gonna find it hard to believe there's not a municipality that has a conservation easement in the United States.
Well, caveat with, I don't know Virginia law, so there may not be the 114356 provision that mandates that Virginia municipalities have management control over the real property, and absent that, I mean, that may override something. I just don't know. There is no law in Alabama on it at all that I could find. Ken, you weren't able to find any either.
Nothing specific addressing conservation as part of the dilemma, without having in our hands the exact terms of conservation. Because look at what Alabama law we do have, and maybe look elsewhere in other states. It needs to be looked at.
Jimmy, I'd ask if y'all want to table it, not to do bits and pieces, just
All
kind of
right.
keep it intact for now, to keep
That's
it
fine.
clean, so,
For now, let's do that.
Yeah, I make a motion, we table agenda item number 28 until further, till council has additional time to look at the legalities presented.
all right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to table, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. 4-1 to table, clerk? Okay, motion carries. All right, thank you, council. Item 29 on tonight's agenda is a site plan review and approval at a request of Larry Smith with SE Civil Engineering on behalf of 10 North Section LLC. Mr. Matt Bowers for approval of 10 North Section Street Boutique Hotel, a multiple occupancy project with 13 units located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Fairhope Avenue and Section Street in the Central Business District of downtown Fairhope, consisting of .07 acres and approved contingent upon conditions recommended by the Planning Commission and staff. Mr. King?
And good evening, council. We'll begin the review of the site plan review for the boutique hotel. You'll see some slides that reference the multiple occupancy project that was approved by the Planning Commission. I'm utilizing those to help explain the site plan review itself. And what I'd call to your attention, what I'd like to call to the council's attention, the public's attention, the area outlined in heavy black is the proposed site. The city-owned property is immediately northwest of, this is the subject property for the development. This area here and it's a bit hard to control the mouse, so I apologize. But you'll saw that area to the northwest is the city-owned property. The additional background, as we mentioned, 13-unit multiple occupancy project that is in the Central Business District where it's Zone B2. Mr. Smith is the engineer of record. Mr. Clay Adams, Walk Adams Vernell, is the architect of record and developed by Mr. Matt Bowers. A brief look here in council. I'll flip through some of these familiar drawings very quickly. We can use them to go back to answer questions. A site plan here, and you'll see the crosshatch area showing the development. This view looking northeast from the intersection of Section and Fairhope Avenue toward the proposed development. This is looking to the southeast from Section Street back toward the foreground is the city-owned property. This right here is one of the drawings of the first floor, which will contain some lease space and some areas that we'll refer to here in a future slide. Floors 2 and 3, the second and third floors of the proposed development are shown here. This is the rooftop terrace for the proposed boutique hotel. What I'd call everyone's attention to is this section view of the building. So therefore, it's proposing 3 floors. The only structures going to the maximum allowable 40-foot height would be the ingress-egress areas. So elevator tower, stair tower. So it's only consisting of 3 floors to 30 feet. The 40-foot high structure is simply the ingress-egress structures, and those will be 40 feet or below. We'll mention traffic very briefly, that the zoning ordinance, and you see the reference right there, that on-site parking is not required in the Central Business District as contemplated by the zoning ordinance. And these are some of the MOP items considered during the MOP process. We can refer back to these for answering questions. Did want to share this drawing on this slide. This shows the perspective of the Fairhope clock in relation to the proposed structure. Both looking toward the northeast and then also looking toward the southwest. On May 6th, the Planning Commission unanimously approved unanimously approved the multiple occupancy project related to this development on May 6th. It included 4 different conditions of approval. Now, 3 of these are routine conditions that are necessary for MOPs from a technical nature. What I would point out to the council here is item number 4 is where the site plan review is tied to the MOP, that the condition of approval of the MOP is approval of the site plan, which is very common for these types of development reviews. What we'll launch into here is the actual criteria of the site plan review inside the zoning ordinance. I'll note here the build to sidewalk requirement. I'll mention that in greater detail here in just a moment. There's also some language in the comprehensive plan about bicycle mobility. As the building permit process, if the development proceeds, there will be some possible considerations that the developer may wish to handle there. We mentioned the MOP case previously. Well, for the council's information, this required receiving approval of the hotel use from the Board of Adjustments as procedure requires. That occurred on December 17th of last year. Mentioning sidewalks for a moment. In the CBD, 8-foot sidewalks are required. Now, the zoning ordinance does include an administrative request process where those sidewalk widths can be narrowed. And so that request was made of staff. Staff's recommendation will be to allow 7-foot sidewalks on the Fairhope Avenue side of the development to maintain continuity with the existing structures that will be adjacent to this development. You'll see in the recommendation in a few slides that we'll talk to in just a moment that the staff does recommend enforcing the 8-foot sidewalk width on Fairhope Avenue. The compliance with other laws and regulations basically ties it back to the MOP. We noted here that, of course, private property via single tax. What we would mention here, without going into too great a detail, is that protecting the Fairhope, the city of Fairhope property adjacently, that will be accomplished very similar to the protected sidewalks you see around town for various other developments. And of course, Mr. Cortinas would review that should a building permit occur. We want to talk about impacts on surrounding neighborhood because of noise, traffic. The applicant was reiterated very clear that construction activities, material deliveries will occur during approved working hours. This slide right here includes the overall benefit to the community, and I'll save this. The developer may want to read this to the council himself, so I'll save this here and refer back to it if the developer would like to read that and then expound upon it as well. Continuing on with the criteria of site plan review, the first floor retail, commercial retail, that is definitely supported by the central business district provisions of the zoning ordinance. We talked earlier about build-to sidewalks. These are basically zero lot lines in the central business district. I also mentioned the small diagonal courtyard to provide additional clearance for the Fairhope clock. That is contemplated as an allowable type of use within the zoning ordinance, as you see referenced right there. Talking about building exterior facades, and as we mentioned earlier, the building height, both 30 feet for the 3 floors and the 40-foot overall for the ingress-egress structures, is allowable. You'll see the note there about site lighting, that other than some lanterns, decorative lanterns on the side of the building, there's no desire to add to lighting in the right-of-way. We'll note here very importantly that your HVAC units are screened, located on the roof of the proposed building. The some additional technical details here. What I'd point out to the council is that a proof of a clean site will be provided prior to the issue of a land disturbance permit. We've had that assurance from the developer's engineer because of the historical uses of that piece of property from the old Gaston Ford dealership. As we said earlier, the on-site parking is not a requirement in the central business district. And also, the additional landscaping will continue to occur in the right-of-way. Dumpster location and screening, what we'll clarify and what the developer and the engineer and architect clarified for us is that you'll see the text there. The intention is to have, the intention is to utilize roll-out waste carts and protect them behind a louvered door on the exterior, and that would also allow a space for a potential can wash and other needs for a restaurant. You'll see they did provide a cut sheet for that, and when we go through questions and answers, we can flip back to previous slides if we need to show that area in greater detail. Staff recommendation for approval for the site plan review, as we mentioned earlier, we recommend acceptance of the 7-foot wide sidewalks along Fairhope Avenue portion of the development, but staff recommends non-acceptance of the request for 8-foot wide, non-acceptance of the applicant's request for sidewalks less than 8-foot wide along Section Street. So staff's recommendation is maintain those 8-foot wide sidewalks on the Section Street side of the development. And council members, I'm happy to go back to previous slides and answer questions on behalf of staff. And of course, the architect and engineer of record and developer are here with us tonight.
Council, questions for Mr. King?
Yeah, Buford, I'd like to see the slide again about the overall benefit to the community.
Yes, sir, and I will flip back to that slide and leave it up on screen a bit longer.
Thank you, sir.
Comments, Jay?
Yeah. You know, I got to say, you know, this is a very well-written vision statement for someone who wants to build a hotel in this community. And I see the design. I don't have any issues with the design. And there are many places in Fairhope that I think this would be perfect for. Unfortunately, I don't see the benefit to the community on that particular corner. I think it would be obtrusive and really create potential issues for the community as a whole in that particular area. And I have concerns about it. I have safety concerns, not only in the construction process, which I imagine would be a complete and total nightmare in this location, but after construction. And I personally just don't see the benefit outweighing the public detriment, in my personal opinion.
Other comments, council, or questions?
You know, I have a question. Where did the discussions go with swapping the north with the south property? We hear it's discussed, but, and he was sort of in favor one way or the other. He could be talked to about it, but I didn't hear the conclusion. I'm looking at the conclusion, he didn't want it.
And council members, I would defer that to the developer. Certainly, the developer could withdraw the application, submit an additional application in the future, or if received approval of this one and decided not to act upon it, and then submit a new application in the future. All of those options are certainly available to the developer, and the council may wish to ask the developer that question, ask that himself.
We'll get to that in a minute. Any other questions?
Yeah, what was the reasoning behind reducing the sidewalk on Fairhope Avenue to 7 foot?
Yes, sir. So the request was so that way the new structure, and Councilman, I'm trying to find a drawing that will illustrate that better, give the best illustration of that. If you'll notice the structures to the east, if we get closer to Jillwin's, for example, what that would do is maintaining a 7-foot wide sidewalk instead of an 8-foot wide sidewalk would align the new development structure with the existing structures, maintain continuity, so that way there would not be a notchback or a depression in the new building versus the existing ones. And so that was the origin of that request.
I want to address that one provision that was allowed, and that is that I see a building on a corner as being, if I will use the term again, a cornerstone. And so once you set that precedent, if the buildings to the east were ever torn down and remodeled and they go up from there, well, now you've set the precedent for a 7-foot line when the actual requirement is for an 8-foot line. So I would push to say, if you're going to approve it, you would only have the 8-foot along both streets, and then make the future buildings, because they're a lot older and could potentially be torn down and rebuilt as whatever, is to not let the older building drive the requirement. And we're changing a requirement that we have that's a good requirement. We're getting more crowded, not less crowded. We need wider sidewalks, not narrower. That if anything, you would impose the 8-foot setback in both directions. And I understand the continuity and the aesthetics of that, but we don't know what's going to come after that. And we set the precedent, we set the bar at the wrong height, I think, if we do that.
Yes, sir.
That's one issue I have with the recommendation, but I'll talk some more. While we're on that, I wanted to just, give a different perspective on that.
Sure. And completely understandable, Council members, completely understandable on that, certainly a reasonable assessment.
Other comments?
I had a question. I'm trying to find it about the Board of Adjustments approval. They have to approve the use, or they did approve the use in December for a hotel. Is that, I guess they had to approve the use, anything within the CBD, and what's the basis? They just to give them a look at it, or do they have to determine a reason why to allow it?
And council members, that is a requirement of the zoning ordinance. So that is that particular use in the zoning chart, in the various chart of zoning uses, is not an allowable by right use, and so therefore requires requesting that use to be approved by the Board of Adjustments. And I think the drafter and the original author of the zoning ordinance contemplated that there may be possibly areas where a B2 use is perfectly allowable, but you might have the intensity of a hotel may not necessarily be an ideal use for a particular location. So that does give a level of oversight to another city entity to review to review that request.
To follow up on that comment, you know, in many cases, when people go before the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, they have to prove that there's a hardship. You know, so for this instance, for this use, I'm going to kind of guess maybe you don't have to prove a hardship. You just have to, you don't have to prove a hardship in this case. It's an allowed use if allowed by the Board of Adjustments.
Yes, sir.
It may not be the same set of rules. Is that,
yes, sir.
Is that right?
So yes, council members, slightly different criteria when this is by appeal to the board. So rather than asking, unlike the variance process where you have to demonstrate a hardship, this is an appeal to the board to ask for approval of the use, and the applicant demonstrates why it's an appropriate and allowable use for the subject property on which it's requested.
Any other comments? I have some more, but I'm just withholding them right now.
I've got one more as far as, I'm having a little problem in when we required Hampton Inn to provide parking, but we don't have to do that, yet we required them to do it, but we're not requiring this group to do it. I'm not following that.
And council members, my apologies there. I do not have a complete history of the Hampton Inn and the situation at that time, because obviously the parking deck is a function of the parking authority, and I can't give you a great answer on that right now, council member, not knowing a complete history on that. So my apologies there. I can't really answer that right now. What I can tell you is what the zoning ordinance does allow in this particular case on this piece of property, because it's within the CBD. So my apologies on not having that historical information.
Didn't Wayne had shared with me that the parking that y'all came up with, though, with current use or retail, can you explain that? I mean, because it was about the same, if not less, than what a hotel would have.
And Mayor, that's a great point, and don't have that information in my mind right now.
I can forward y'all what Wayne did, but I mean, I know there's more rooms now, so however he figured that out, I'll get it.
And council members, one of the slides, something I would emphasize though, that I did not illuminate earlier, and I hope you'll indulge me just a second, and I'll see if I can find it here. Well, I'll just verbalize it to you, is that one of the review criteria also was that this review assumes that these are hotel rooms, that they are not fully functioning dwelling units. And this review assumes they will not become dwelling units that would require and generate the need for on-site parking. That this is strictly a hotel use, so you would not have a full kitchen, full services within the rooms that would generate some type of dwelling where on-site parking would be needed. If some type of alteration like that ever occurred, then that would be an issue about the lack of on-site parking.
And I do have to admit that it's crossed my mind, although we're not supposed to be considering a future use of that and only a current use of that, that if the hotel did fail, you do have to wonder, are they going to come back and say, okay, it failed, now you've got to help me out. We're going to have a vacant building down there that's an eyesore, and I'm going to have to turn this into dwellings. If that was to occur, you know, and I'm not saying that if it didn't occur, they would be required to provide parking with no exceptions whatsoever, and I just don't know how they would do that. And like I said, I know that we're not supposed to consider that, but I think it'd be short-sighted to not at least play that what-if question in your mind. And I would still, while I'm talking, I'll go ahead and tell you, I would still like to, I would like to ask the developer, if, as he stated and offered up in the Planning Commission meeting, if they would entertain a land swap. Most of the resistance to this centers around protecting that iconic corner of Fairhope, and I think that because it does remove that, I don't think that it benefits the city. But if we could, somehow get back to the table and discuss that, and maybe we could come to some kind of terms that would be agreeable to the citizens of the city to protect that, because if you look at it now, I mean, the front door is literally 5 or 6 feet from the clock. I don't know what that diagonal is there, but it's not much. If you look at the width of the sidewalk, it being 7 feet, it doesn't even look like as much as a sidewalk width there. So, and I know that we can't, impose negotiations, but I would just like to entertain that thought. I have sat down with the developer and have had that discussion with them. It went to the Planning Commission and the recommendation was made for approval. And so maybe that's, they didn't feel the need to do that, and maybe they don't now, and I can't put words in their mouth, but I still want to ask if that's even feasible.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Any other questions or comments, council? That's about all I have.
All right. Council, thank you.
Okay.
And recall me as needed.
Okay. Would the developer or his representative please like to speak?
Good evening, everybody.
Yeah.
My name is Clay Adams with Walcott Adams Vernell. I know most of you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. We're here to share the concept design. I want to talk a little bit about some of those issues rather than the technical issues, and then we'll end up answering your questions, many that have been asked. I tried to take notes. We'd like to share some insight into Matt Bauer's concept to develop the boutique hotel. Matt is here tonight. Larry Smith, who helped us with our submittal for Matt, is here also if there's any technical questions that we might ask. We all recognize that Section Street and Fairhope Avenue is the center of town. We know that. The northeast corner, as you know and heard, contains our town clock that we're all very proud of. Our plan is to incorporate the clock. It wasn't to move it. We've never mentioned moving it, disturbing it, or relocating, but embracing it in our design. And if you're on social media, you understand how important the corner of town is. The selfies that are taken with the clock down that street is probably one of the most photographed areas in Fairhope besides the pier and the bay, obviously. Our hopes is that our new building looks like an historic structure and is a timeless building, and some people might even believe that it was an original historic inn that many times was located at the center of town, so it has some historic reference. A couple of things the city has going on that I think help our project, would embellish it, is we understand the city is studying the improvements to the crosswalk planter circles. We were involved with the very first planter circle some 25 years ago. We were proud of that. I think it's a part of what makes Fairhope special with the landscaping and the flowers, as we all know. And if they're studying that, it's going to give a bigger space to the corner. And that, a second issue is that they're underway with studying how to develop the courtyard that exists. We all know it's fairly underdeveloped now. It can be hot. There's not any seating there, so both of those factors, along with our building, we think that the corner may actually be better to the people who are using it. As Buford mentioned, just briefly, our building is 3,000 square feet. We plan to remove the existing building. The ground floor is going to contain a lobby. A trend in boutique hotels is that it may be a personless lobby, which you make your arrangements online, you check in. There might be 1,500 square feet of lease space remaining on the ground floor, and then we worked very hard with all the department heads to make sure that our building looks better than some. I own some buildings. There are gas meters, there are garbage cans, there are can washes. We've worked really hard to designate an area behind those louvers that Buford showed you that would contain all those functions, because we realize how important it is on the corner. Matt has done everything the city's asked at each of the steps, and he wants to make a really great building that he's proud of, and we worked really hard on those aesthetics, trying to hide those functional pieces. The floors were mentioned. The second floor would have, and the third would have rooms, double or singles. We talked about a theme that was mentioned in the vision that Jay responded to. We see themes of each room being maybe the history of Fairhope, the artists, the writers, and even the environment. To address the parking real quick, parking is not required in the CBD per the zoning ordinance. And it is stated in the minutes, Karen, that the city has said twice in their analysis that our future use will be less than the current use. We can all assume how they got to that, and you could look at the minutes, but if PostNet was doing 8 transactions an hour and 8 hours a day at 64 cars, not everybody can carry a package, so most of them are driving. At once upon a time, it had a second floor that was leasable, so that has a certain number of parking spaces. We have 1,500 square feet and 4 or 5 rooms per floor. Our parking is less, and the city, your staff has said that on 2 occasions, and they're doing a current parking study that will also point that out. So our design embraces the clock. We've angled our building, which is how you design a building on a corner. We happen to have designed 2 other buildings on that same corner. I worked on the McKean building probably 30 years ago. Its design feature is a radius balcony. We did a second floor residential, which at that time was not happening in Fairhope. It's now a very popular thing, and that was one of the projects that led that, and we all appreciate what's going on with those second floor. We were involved with the Fairhope Pharmacy. It sat with a metal siding on it for years. We worked with the owner to replace the siding and take it down, replace all the windows, and bring the Fairhope Pharmacy building back to its original glory. So we've worked on those 3 buildings, or will have worked on those 3, and each one of them has a strong and different architectural feature and characteristics. We've also worked on 34 buildings downtown, Jay. I want you to know we know how to build in a tight site. If you build anything on that site, it's going to be a huge inconvenience. We built two doors down. It's not a different just because you're on the corner. It's complicated wherever you build in it, and we've done it some 34 times in whether it's been renovations or new buildings. So we're very knowledgeable about that, and I don't think just because it's on the corner it's any more complicated to build on. So one other thing about the process, we started this process in September, and we've had 8 months and 12 meetings that the city has required us to have. We've gotten great feedback from the city at the DRC meetings to do whatever they ask, work through the height issues, the floors, the maximum height. I think Matt's done all that the city has asked each time we've been to one of those meetings. At the community meeting, we had the owner of Andres and another building that came to the meeting and had positive comments about it. We've talked to merchants, adjacent property owners, city planners, city council members. We've met with some of you that would meet with us. We've met with a single tax who was excited about the project when we took it to get it signed for our submittal, and at every step we incorporated their comments, and all of that was for Matt trying to do what is really considered by him to be a great project that he can be proud of. And our firm is that same way. We don't work on every project. We work on projects that we believe in, and we're excited about this. It is something, and again in the vision statement, it's something Fairhope doesn't have. It's not a 50-room hotel like the Hampton Inn. It's not priced the same as the Hampton Inn. It's offering a different kind of venue. It's not offered anywhere in town. Probably, Kevin, because of 50 rooms, they had to do parking, when we're doing 4 or 5
You don't have to do
rooms.
parking if it's not required.
That's right.
If it's not required, you don't have to do anything.
That's right. So probably the amount of that, somebody said, hey, maybe you need to build a parking deck and pay for a floor. That's what I think went on that, but I wasn't involved in that in any way either. You know, so again, Matt wants to do something unique that's currently not available, and it's timeless and striking. Yeah, I think it's the perfect location. I just disagree with some of the comments. It's not any harder to build there than one door down. It's going to be an inconvenience. You can't really tell a man he can't develop his property, I don't believe, especially through the processes that we've been through with unanimous votes and the number of meetings we had. I think it's a perfect location for that. And if people happen to think of it as a historic structure that might have been there forever, then that's the perfect job that we've done and the statement we've made architecturally. If y'all have any specific questions, we could go back. If I didn't address them each, I'd be glad to try to answer. And I know Matt also wants to speak to you. I just wanted the opportunity to tell you something you might not have heard from us at any of the other meetings, because we haven't been in front of each of you at those other meetings. Thank y'all very much. Yep.
Thank you, Clay. Thank you. Yeah, so the design, I like the design. I think it looks good. I like the fact that you went 30 feet and not the maximum 40 except for the egress. I think that's a benefit. Parking, that's not an issue for all the reasons you stated. You know, it's a lot less demand on than what could be built there. The future use, if this fails, is not my issue. I'm not the developer. I don't have to worry about if the economics work. If it fails, that's Mr. Bauer's issue. Right. Individually, I like it. However, I'm serving as a councilman tonight, and I'm serving all the citizens of Fairhope. And when we were told in a public meeting that he was open to options of swapping that land, I want to pursue those options.
Yes. I can say that it was brought up in January, April, and May, and it never got legs. I can let Matt address that, but that's not fair to him the night of the vote, because I promise you, it's been brought up in January, April, and May, twice in May, 4 times, and he said yes and never heard from the city. So he'll speak to that, but that.
But the city's not.
Oh, the
accepting the burden of the development.
developer can't do it. It had to be the city trading their land. That's not a private citizens can't do that. Y'all, what he said was, yes, let me hear from you, and we never heard from him.
I met with you, Mr. Adams, met with both of you, and I offered to try to broker a deal to come back, bring it back to the council and broker a deal. And the last response I had was, how about I buy the north parcel of land and lease it back to the city?
So, and what did
And why in the world would we do that?
Oh, I don't know that, but did you counter offer talk? It died there. I don't know how to do that.
It died there because that was the counter offer. I couldn't
and
go anywhere. I couldn't, where was I going to go with that?
Well, I don't know. That's not acceptable. I don't know that. That's not what I do for a living, right? Yeah.
You mind if I say something here?
Sure.
First of all, thank you, gentlemen, Mayor Wilson, we've never met. I've met many of you. You know, to be really clear, a couple of things that were brought up. As a person that's going to be building this, developing this, you know, I take any development, even one that's a smaller development like this one, very, very seriously financially. I do feasibility studies. I've had 2 separate hotel advisory firms come to Fairhope, explore room rates, the price of Coca-Colas, all these other options to ascertain the feasibility of this project. When I got the second one, they said, hey, this might be overkill for a 10-room hotel. I said, I just want to be absolutely sure. I also engaged a professional commercial real estate firm, a national firm, to evaluate this property and give me what are the 3 highest and best uses of this property in any respect. If this one didn't work, how about this, how about this? Developing this into condos didn't make the top 4, okay? Hotel, retail, professional office. There's multiple uses, and in fact, you know, the hotel wasn't successful renting 10 rooms downtown. As far as the land swap before I'm sorry to interrupt Clay, but to be absolutely fair about this, I stood here 1 month ago. I believe Councilman Brown was standing in the office or in the room or near me, and I said, I'm open, available to discuss whatever that looks like. Okay, that's what I said. My phone has not rung at one time. My phone number is not going to change tomorrow. Yes. Yes. I said, hey, why don't you do this and you do this? No, we wouldn't do that. As a matter of fact, I don't know if bottom line is I haven't had anybody stand up and say I can do this on behalf of the city. I've had 4 people tell me that they could maybe do it, but I don't know exactly who I'm supposed to be talking to. So if that's clarified, I'm happy to work it out. I want to do a great project. I don't think the buy-in of the community is needed to do a good project. I think the buy-in of the community is needed to do a great project, though. Yeah, I own the real estate at that location. I want to do a great project, though. That's what I want to do. If that means swapping the property, working something out. I told my wife I'd be home late tonight. I got all night, okay? But at the same token, I don't think anybody in this room can tell you that I've done anything, business, negotiations, anything that's been in bad faith. Everything I've done has been in good faith. I do think it's a little bit unfair to me to say, hey, look, we're not going to make this decision pending how you negotiate with us on this property. You've already made it very clear that you're not willing to pay 40% over appraisal for anything, much less this. I don't necessarily want anything. I want to be fair, though. I don't want to trade a Sammy Sosa rookie for a Mickey Mantle rookie. All right? I'm willing to get in the middle of this someplace, but at the end of the day, I just got to be able to know I can get in and out, and I got to, I can't hire Clay to go do work. I can't hire a local contractor to use his resources and time to build this. I haven't brought anybody that wasn't from the city of Fairhope to do this project. I'm the only one who's not. So I understand there's emotional, feelings and decisions regarding this particular property. I have received 3 calls from citizens of Fairhope. 3, no more than 3. I've been able to talk. You can find me on Twitter, my phone, wherever. I'm easy to track down. I'll speak to whoever would like to speak about it. I'm open to any of these ideas. I just want to be treated fairly on a piece of property that took me 2 years to buy, okay? That was very, very difficult. That meant something to me personally. I want to build a good project, but a great project. So if somebody would raise their hand and say, hey, look, I'm the guy to negotiate or lady to negotiate with on this land swap, please do. I'll be around after the meeting. Just any consideration and fairness around that would be appreciated, though. Okay.
Comments, council?
Yeah. I want to first start by addressing some of the things that Clay said, or maybe not address them, but just comment on them. I've got absolutely no issues with you guys and what you have proposed. I think from an aesthetic standpoint, it looks good. And I truly think that in the right spot, it could be very beneficial to downtown. My concerns are not just about this location, but it is about the build out, and I've heard, and that's not just my personal experience, because I've never built anything other than maybe a couple of birdhouses as a kid. But I've spoken to people in the planning department, and my concerns are their concerns. Mr. Bowers, I do appreciate you being here, and I do appreciate what you said, and I do understand kind of the hoops that you've jumped through and Clay has jumped through to get to this point. And I really appreciate your use of the baseball card analogy, because I can appreciate that as a baseball card man.
I think I have a Sammy Sosa rookie card if you'd like to swap. Maybe not a rookie card. But while it may not seem fair to you, and it may not be,
You've got 3 phone calls. I've gotten 44 emails in the last 24 hours. And so my job is to listen to those people. And if that means taking a little bit more time to make sure we get it done so that everybody is on board, so that you do have a great project like you talked about, not a good project, then I think that's what I've got to do. And I see the crew that you brought with you, and I know that you've hired some great people, maybe the best people to do this job for you. And so I have no doubt that they would do a great job, but I've got some other factors that I've got to consider in deciding whether or not I can vote yes to move this project forward at this time.
Can I answer some of that? If I'm not mistaken, Buford, there is a way to build a building without coming through the council and site plan reviews. So somebody can build something on that property. So it doesn't, right, Buford? There's a, if it wasn't multi-occupancy, if it was simple, if it was a building on that only.
So council members, there are certain criteria that would not trigger a site plan review. However, in the central business district, virtually every development in the central business district automatically triggers a site plan review. If it's built to the right-of-way line, it automatically triggers a site plan review.
It wasn't,
theoretically.
but
Theoretically, that's correct.
Okay, so you're devaluing this property and saying it can stay the little not-so-nice-looking building it is, and that's all it can ever be. I don't think you can do that. I just don't think that, the ordinance, Wayne Dye specifically said, the new height requirement was to help promote underdeveloped properties and make things look better. So you're going against, I just don't think that makes sense. Somebody's going to build something, and if it's L-shaped, straight, 3-2, it's going to disrupt, and it's going to happen on that site. A bank is not a better option and less dangerous. A restaurant is more people. There are 2-story restaurants in cities. It happens all the time. All of a sudden, the developer never wanted to put balconies out to the curb line, which everybody else does. George McKean did across the street that we did. We didn't want 40 people in each room hanging off the balcony. Those things are there. That affects the scale of the building on the street to the people of Fairhope. We didn't do that. We have these Romeo and Juliet balconies with flush with a door where you might fit 2 people in there. So, we could answer each question, but we've heard these things and we work really, really hard to try to address them all. Something's going to be built there, and I think something that you couldn't approve the use or didn't have to, and or the site plan. So, the fact that we're a hotel, at a boutique hotel, and we're doing not balconies and not the maximum height, I just see it totally different, that we're trying to do all the right things. So I feel a little bit like Matt, that 8 months, 12 meetings, he said yes every time. I don't know how a developer talks about swapping land. I think it's the city's responsibility. I think we said that, but we could argue about that. It's been said 4 times for sure, and Matt said yes every time, but it didn't have legs. Are there any other questions?
I agree with you. Things have to be done in a proactive way, and the whole planning process now has completely changed, even though this is kind of what we were faced with before this term. We want a process that is predictable, where we're working with developers to build the best for the city. Now, not everybody's going to like every product, but if they're following everything and working with us, it's exactly the way all of our other lawsuits have happened. You have to have a consistent process that we put in place. It's better than before. There's more engagement, more community engagement. But if we open it up to everyone to always have a say, I don't like that, but they need to do this. This is America. Once it's built, I think everybody's going to love it. I never came out and said, I love this. I don't have a dog in this fight. But what I do know is that if we don't have a process where it's not, everybody has to spend all this money and we have to hold our breath and cross our fingers and hold our tongue the right way to see if it's approved, we're never going to be able to move forward.
Any other comments, council? I would say, just before we move on, is that, Mr. Bowers, I had met with you. I walked away from that, maybe it's my fault for not getting back to you, but I did have the feeling that we weren't going, that you weren't in favor. That was just my impression, that you weren't in favor. So I did not go back to the city council, go into an executive session and discuss the what-ifs of a land swap. And then that is why I also, as you alluded to, I could not say, yes, I can do this, because I'm one of 5 and I can't do anything on my own. And not coming back to the council, I didn't feel like the offer was going anywhere. So I'll offer up to council to sit back down and try to negotiate if that's the desires, and if not, then we'll take a vote right now. But
I believe that's going to be the desires, because I got to be honest with you. I've developed a lot of property, and every property I ever developed, I first ascertained what my problems were going to be. And that corner with that clock is the problem. And it's hard for me to understand how all this great design and great understanding, trying to do the best you can do, incorporate that corner without a trade. I really am. I'm having a hard time with that. Because if I had the opportunity to trade that property, get away from that corner, I'd have jumped on that thing like a June bug.
He said yes 4 times. I was at each one, so.
To swap the property?
Yes.
Well, then, let's table this, let's go ahead and get this property swapped, and let's go from there.
Well, there didn't appear to be a leader, and he said, yes, I can't do it, Matt has to speak about it. But why didn't it have legs, and why are we here tonight voting and talking about it when we talked about it in January? That's all. It seems to be a process of DRC meetings and community meetings and all that. In fact, I heard that council people see it last. So I tried to get the council people to hear the concept early rather than late, because some said, y'all don't get to see it until it's, at the very end. So I called each one of you, emailed each one of you, and asked to meet so you would be informed early, and that's where some of those issues arose.
well, I know when we met, I made no promises to support it. I was relatively supportive of it, but I had the issues with the corner, which was why I proposed a swap. But there was never an agreement I didn't hear a yes. Maybe I didn't hear that, but I didn't hear a yes on that. But
Well, he told Mr. Brown yes, it's just a public meeting that I had minutes 3 weeks ago or whenever it was, and Robert said, would you be interested? And Matt took the podium and said yes. So that was a yes.
Okay.
But it hadn't gone anywhere from there.
He said, yeah, show me how to do it.
Okay.
Somebody show me how to do it.
Okay, so that's been,
I have
that
egress
was
problems, but it's got.
about 3.5 weeks ago. Yeah, okay.
May the 6th.
All right. So, yeah,
We'll do it now.
3 weeks and a day.
Yeah, as I've sat here and listened to the people's comments, the mayor's comments, and Clay and Mr. Bowers, I've made several decisions up here that I was not in favor of, but I made them because it was what was right and what was fair. And the mayor's been through the process and had opportunities, and I'm gonna take some blame. He said he was open for a swap, and I did not take the time to pursue it. So he's been through the process.
Well, is it too late to pursue it now? I mean, we seem to be skirting around this. I like to pursue it now.
Well, let me just put it to you this way. If we table it, there's a chance to reach some type of agreement. If it passes, it passes. If it fails, you can't come back for, what, a year?
60 days.
How long is it, Buford?
Site plan review, I believe it's 6 months.
6 months?
6 months.
6 months, that's right, 6 months. I knew 6 was in it.
6 months for site plan review.
All right, council, I need to entertain a motion for whatever you desire to do, or either no motion.
I make a motion, we table it.
Second.
To give an opportunity to have an additional discussion with Mr. Bowers about some potential issues that we can address.
I hear a motion and a second to table it. Any further discussion?
Can I say something before? If Matt doesn't want you to table it, can he request a vote and stop that?
I mean, we could grant that request if we if we choose to, but he can't demand it either way. We can table it if we want, or we can force a vote.
I know, I totally agree. I mean, what we need, I mean, again, proactive communication, I'm a proponent. And if you would have reached out to me, there's no question we would have had a meeting. But when we're not doing our job to make things happen, especially when they're reaching out to us, I mean, developers shouldn't have to go through all of this when they've gone through all of this other process.
Now, Mayor, I am so surprised to hear you say that, because you had the exact opposite opinion when the Flat Creek apartments were up here being discussed.
This went to a process and community engagement from them. The process for the Fly Creek apartments, you had everybody coming out and didn't listen to any of them. He's listened to everybody. He has made his changes.
I just got the 45th email at 9:26 PM, and I have that obligation to listen.
I mean, let me tell you, I will go into a lot more detail.
Listen, we're in council discussion part. We have a motion and a second, all right?
Wait, but you have to inform the client. We ask a question, we just need to know.
And I mean, I've gave direction to the council that we have a motion and a second right now.
They're dictators. I didn't know if you
And
knew
I said that we can consider that. We can consider that. I mean, you could either withdraw, or we can take a vote. We can consider your request to take the vote. But we can also take action to table something if we like. I mean, we're not required to, it's on the agenda. We're not required to vote yea or nay. Our option is also to table if we so desire. That's our option.
It sounds as if we have to, then we will table it.
I was just going to say, though, we're in the discussion phase now, and it's been interrupted several times. Please, Mr. Adams, please, hold on a minute. So I was going to say, during the discussion phase, if you want to consider his will to vote, you could withdraw that motion, and we could take a vote, or you could table. I think, my personal opinion is your tabling is in your best interest.
I'm not sure about your advice, but we would like to table it now based on our opinion of what's happening. Jay, 50 people don't like the Martin House at the Bay, and who doesn't like that, or the Dubs? 50 out of 20,000 residents is not. I talked to 200. I didn't know we needed to bring the positive votes to the meeting. I'm just saying.
You might have spoken to 200. I haven't heard from one that said they're in favor of it.
I'm not lying, though.
I don't believe that you are.
Yeah.
And maybe this tabling 2 weeks will give me the opportunity to reach out to some of those people that do have a positive opinion, because that would persuade me.
Is there an item on there that really stood out to you, or was it just no? Or was there items on there that really stood out to you? Were they all residents of Fairhope? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I can show you the emails, and we can sit down and look at them.
There were a lot of people that came out and said, don't do this and don't do that, and y'all did it anyway, so I don't think, y'all really listened.
And negative on social media. They didn't come to the community meetings to speak out.
There you go.
Okay, council. All right. We have a motion and a second. If you choose not to withdraw a motion, we will.
I just like to say, I got another email that said, count me as number 46, so.
And we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the council only, please? Okay, hearing no further discussion on the motion to table, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. Motion carries to table 4-1, is that right, clerk? Okay, 4-1. Thank you, council. Item 30 on tonight's agenda is appointments to the Personnel Board.
I would like to have a conversation.
The nominees for a 5-year term are Jake O'Neill, filling the unexpired term of Ron Hayes, and John Manellis for a term that shall end in December 2024. I'll entertain a motion to appoint these Personnel Board members. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I would like to, may I introduce one of our newest members?
Can we vote on it first?
He ain't a member yet.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Go get him, girl.
Okay, with yours, then you can say.
I told her that you just throw things out if you introduce them.
All of y'all may already know John Manellis. The mayor sent us 2 nominations about 2 weeks ago. 2 of us were able to meet with John and with Jake O'Neill, whom I didn't invite tonight, I wish I had. But we're very excited. We think he brings diverse background, diverse experience, as does Jake. So we look forward to serving the mayor and to serving back. You want to say something?
No, I just briefly, I think you've heard me speak many, many times in front of the council about what I think Fairhope makes it great. It's this beautiful bay and the environment here, but it's these great city employees that I know each and every one of you value. So it's a privilege and an honor to be able to serve in some capacity that advances that in some way. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 31, this was added to the agenda earlier. This is concerning the sewer main point repair and bypass connections, bid number 9-19 for the sewer department. This would be an award to W.R. Mitchell contractor with a total bid proposal of $1,185,500. The first year of the contract will be $250,000 with the balance budgeted over the next 2 years. So this would be for approving the $250,000 expenditure. I'll entertain a motion to approve the expenditure.
So moved.
Have a motion and a second, actually, to award the bid, that is. Any further discussion? Who seconded it? Jimmy?
Motion.
Who made the second down here? Councilman Brown? Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Okay. Motion carries. Next item, public participation. If you have anything else to bring forth before the council, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Ron Allen.
Because y'all never respond to my.
After the adjournment, is there possibility that the 5 council members and the mayor can get with the owner and do the land swap?
No.
No?
We 5 can't do it without a meeting, without an advertised meeting.
Not my rule.
I'd love to.
I wish you could, but I think you can get it done.
I don't know, I'm answering that, it's Jack's job.
Ben Smith, 217 South Mobile Street. You know, my cardiologist says, you don't need to go to these meetings because I get upset so much. My wife fusses at me for coming, and I'm telling you, I really, and you're not going to understand what I'm fixing to say, I really didn't understand what the mayor said about this project. How could we not table this? We know that the citizens wants that clock and wants the area in front of that clock to be large as we can get it, whether we trade or whatever, but we need to get it done. And I'm disappointed because I understood you to say, let's pass it. That's wrong. And for Mr. Bauer and his group, I really think you got a good layout and a good plan, but you got to find a way to agree with the city, council, mayor, citizens most of all, to help us get an area around the clock that we can have crowds. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just had one or two.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll now close out the council comments. Anyone else? I just had something I meant to say earlier, to just wish Sherry Lee Botop well. Tonight was technically her last night, I believe, with the city of Fairhope, and I meant to do that during council comment section. But anyways, wish her well with the Mobile Bay NEP. And also, I do think if we can have an opportunity to sit down with Mr. Bowers, I think we should be considerate of him in the negotiation process if he's willing to negotiate and understand that it may not be a dead even swap. So let's just at least investigate that and see what happens.
There was a negotiation done in good faith there, and there was definitely not a yes to me. I can tell you straight up, there was never a yes, I'll do that. It was that I will buy that other parcel and rent it to you, and that was where that was left. So anyway, any other comments from the public?
Yeah, try again.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. So moved.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Watch out.